My life. I don't think it's
This is the Board of Education regular business meeting for which adequate notice under the Open Public Meetings Law was provided by written notice on April the 26th, 2007 to the Courier News, the Echo Sentinel, the Reporter, the Star Ledger, and the clerks of the Borough of Watchung and the townships of Long Hill and Warren. Can I get a roll call?
Mr. Binder?
Here.
Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Mr. Falzarano? Ms. Vector? Mr. Horowitz? Here. Mr. Pepe?
Aye.
Ms. Mandel? Mr. Sun?
Yeah.
Dr. Yaget?
Here.
And Dr. Seals.
Here.
Yeah, one more.
One more.
Plus one.
Moving me already?
I thought you were.
9 seconds?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All looking off camera. Different directions. Very majestic.
Can we, we'll start with reports and presentations. Dr. Stromford?
Thank you, Dr. Seelig. Several things just to speak about this evening. All good things. This past week, on Thursday, in the Echo Sentinel newspaper, there was a great article in the editorial section about networking now more than ever. I do think that it's a real positive spin on all of the good things that we're doing in terms of reaching out for the 50th anniversary, as well as other events that are happening in our community. So I'm going to pass that out to you for your reading pleasure. It also gives me great pleasure to acknowledge that 5 members of our class of 2008 whose scores on the PSAT were high enough to earn them semi-finalist standing last year have now moved forward in the annual National Merit Scholarship Competition and have just been named 2008 Merit Finalists. Of the estimated 1.3 million college-bound students who took the National Merit Scholarships preliminary examination, only 16,000 were named semifinalists last September. Students that are in the top half of the top 1% of the nation's graduating class by achieving high scores on the follow-up exam, the SAT, as well as outstanding academic records and endorsement of school administration, have earned them this finalist status. As finalists, they will be among some 8,200 merit scholarship winners nationwide to be considered for a share of this year's estimated $33 million in scholarships offered by colleges, foundations, industry, and the not-for-profit National Merit Corporation itself. Recently, Dr. DeGansey expressed his appreciation and pride by awarding them certificates on this fine achievement. I finally have also one item to share with you. I have been working up some ideas about our budget communication plan and have a draft document for you to review. I welcome any input from the board members. I also would welcome the input of the Community Relations Committee, the Finance Committee, or any group or members of the board as they may see fit to offer it. This budget communication plan, which I will pass out to you, again, is preliminary and certainly would be important for us to try to work together very cohesively and seamlessly to approve our new school budget. This evening, we'll be presenting to you a revised budget this evening for your consideration and review. Once that is approved by you, we will post that on the website. It will also be sent over to the county office, the Department of Education, for their approval, which is due by March 6th. We are going to develop and finalize the content of our budget newsletter by March 11th, with a target mailing date of March 31st. The mailing date for the budget newsletter is a wide dissemination. It goes in the same fashion as our usual district newsletter to all families in all the communities. We are also in the process of setting up discussion meetings with groups, the mayors and business officials in our communities, all of our communities, will be taking place between March 20th and the 31st. We have a scheduled meeting with the joint PTO executive boards and the foundation presidents on March the 20th. We are
What time is
that? March the 20th, that's at 11 a.m., I believe. We have senior groups from all towns that we are either going to their senior club meeting, or they will be coming up to visit us, beginning on March 5th through March 31st. And we will also be presenting it at the Watchung Hills PTO meeting at its March meeting. As I'm accustomed to do, I give an interview with the local paper, our Arrowhead School newspaper. Plan to do that on March 11th. On March 7th, we're going to release press releases to all the papers. Also, March 7th, we're going to go to Somerset and Morris County seat to obtain absentee voting ballots. We'll distribute them to the board members as well as have them available in our school office for anyone who would like to receive that. Our budget will be advertised as required by law in the newspaper March 19th through March 21st. We will hold our public hearing on the budget on March 25th at our public meeting. And we will kick off our Kids Vote program on March 26th. Finally, we will culminate this with a successful budget vote on April 15th. Yes?
Fran, I was just thinking two things. I see the target mailing date is March 31st, and that's 2 weeks before the budget. I'm not sure, and maybe everyone else should chime in on this, that maybe you want to push that
Push it
out
back a week.
closer towards the 15th. I think, it's Tuesday, the election's Tuesday, right? It's always Tuesday? Tuesday's the 15th, right?
I think it's a Tuesday,
Yeah,
yes.
it's always Tuesday. So you might want to think about getting that newsletter out but the week before. Because
Give it a little more time.
What?
Give it-
No, the opposite.
Come
The
right
opposite.
before the
Well,
elec-
It-
before
it-
the
closer
When it's-
to the election.
When it's sent out, Rob, it's sent out bulk mailing, so it's not it doesn't get,
Maybe they'll add 1 or 2
takes
more
4 or
days.
5 days usually
If you
before
mail
it
it that
reaches.
Monday, they'll have it by Thursday or Friday. The other thing about
By the end of that
one-
week, yeah.
What?
So
The
you
other
want
thing-
it to come a week later?
No, I understand.
Yeah.
The other thing, what?
So you just don't want them to come late.
No, I understand. Bulk mail adds 1 or 2 days. So if you mail it Saturday, they'll get it Tuesday, Wednesday, week
Right.
before. But you can check on that. I just, the other thing I want to ask, what about the idea of, with the, does Watchung, I know Warren does a mailing, right, Peter? Do they usually do a mailing?
Well, the
The K to
school-
8.
The K-8
Yes.
mailing?
Does
Yeah,
Watchung
they
do one? Paul?
Yes, they do.
Okay, and I
No, we
assume-
do for the budget, for the budget.
Yeah,
Yeah.
budget
Of course.
special.
Yeah, okay, and Long Hill does one probably too, right? Lou, do you know?
Like a budget newsletter?
They do listen, I'm sure if.
A dedicated
There's always
budget
everyone probably
newsletter.
does-
There's
Right.
always something that comes out through
Right,
the
so
school district
just
for
a
all the
thought
budget.
that what we might ask them, now you don't want to, obviously adding weight, but you might want to ask, Fran, like in the other towns, if we put their mailings in our newsletter, if we put their newsletter with our mailing and vice versa, you're going to reach
The same
a larger
people.
audience.
Same people, Rob. We send it to all of the residents of all the communities.
Oh, we're not just saying it to the high school?
Oh, no.
Okay,
Everybody.
no, oh, is that it?
Yep.
Every voter.
It's the same
Okay, no, I thought it was
dissemination.
just going to high school.
No, it's the same dissemination as our usual newsletter gets, which is all families.
Great, okay, then that, don't ask that. But, so the only thing is just find out when,
If we can push it up a
if we can
little,
push it so it get, I mean, ideally, you'd like people to get it
about a week
probably
before.
by Wednesday, Thursday, prior to the Tuesday.
Okay, we'll check on those dates. Again, I welcome any suggestions from the board in terms of improving this list.
we make them available at any kind of school function.
Yes.
Meetings, whether it's a table with something out there, or just, if somebody can be there, that's nice. If not, you at least have absentee ballots out there.
We'll have them out at the play, available at the play, and we have them out usually at different sporting events that take place here. They're easy to obtain.
What's the deadline?
Or
Do you
even
remember
voter
that?
registration.
Well,
Fran,
yes.
the deadline, I mean, I remember when we did
It's a
the
couple weeks
supplemental
before.
bond, but you
Yeah.
gotta remember, there's
Yeah,
pretty
a couple
strict
weeks
deadlines
before.
on that stuff too.
So we'll be sure to pay attention to those dates.
Well, we're getting close to it.
Also, finally, just to say, very proud of our robotics team. They competed this weekend on Saturday at the Sovereign Bank Arena in Trenton, and they did really, really well. Last year, they placed 16 out of 16. This year, they placed 22nd out of 33. So they did had a tremendous job. What we plan to do is plan to put the video about the robot up on the website, because the robot was apparently phenomenal, and the kids really, really worked very hard to make it very successful, and the robot was showing some pretty interesting stuff.
Can't they bring, last year, they brought the robot here last year. Can we
I
get a
think it
little?
was last year or the year before.
Year before.
Yeah.
They brought the robot? Okay.
So those are my remarks, thank you.
I don't have any comments at this time. Tim?
Mr. President?
Catch up, guys?
Jar of water. Jar of water.
Yeah, enough trouble with the water. Two items, Mr. President. Number one, I just wanted to go briefly through some of the changes we made in the budget, and then try to be as brief as possible, give you the status of audit recommendations and where we are. First, on the budget, the difference between the budget the board approved on February 11th and the budget right now is globally, it's $50,109. It's less. So we actually, bottom line is we cut $50,109. So it's less of a spending budget than it was, a little bit less. It was $36,524,469. Now it's at $36,474,360. And just real brief, I don't want to go into a lot of detail, but the tuition revenue we had to reduce by two items, $116,000 and $50,000. 116, as you know, is a process that we worked out with Greenbrook. We found an error. We originally had 232 in this year's budget, 232,000. We took half of that with our agreement with Greenbrook and distributed to the 09-10 budget. So they're going to pay 116 in 08-09 and the other 116 in 09-10. And the other tuition item is that we lost, in our rolls, we lost a student. Not literally lost a student, lost the student's tuition. The student aged out of the program. So we were $50,000 short. So since between February 11th and now, we're lighter $166,000 in tuition. We made part of that up by miscellaneous revenue. We added $116,000 to our miscellaneous. It was 130, now it's 246. The net difference in revenues is now a negative 50,109. And then through the budget process on the appropriation side, we identified a net $50,000 in cuts. We had to add $127,000 in interest on a temporary note that is due on July 7th. We could not move that up. I was hoping we could. We did not. But we offset that through more than $107,000 worth of cuts. Specifically, we cut about $178. So the net difference is a negative $50,000, which is good news. We're actually lower today than we were on February 11th. The one thing that didn't change is the tax levy is 4%. There's no change there. That is still the same. That is the cap. So that hasn't changed at all. So that's the changes on the budget that got us to this. It's item D1 on the agenda. I put that back out. Even though when we approved it on February 11th, we did so with the ability for myself to make some changes, I still would rather have the board approve the actual budget with the actual numbers to submit to the county so it matches our county, our state county software. It's always better to have that, because otherwise they may look at it and may question it, but it's best to have the board to see the actual number too. So that's the budget part. Do you want me to move on with the other piece? And then, I'll try to be brief with the audit stuff. We had 8 recommendations, as you might remember. We've come along on many of them. I'm happy to report. Specifically, the capital asset record keeping. We were behind on our capital asset record management. We hired a physical company to do a physical inventory, and they've done that. They've come here, they've done the field work, and they're ready to issue a report. We should get that within a month. And then we look at that report, we make revisions if necessary, and then eventually that becomes the final report that is included as part of the audit. So we're well on our way for that one. Number 2 was the bond for the treasurer was just a little bit low. At the end of the audit in November, we were able to adjust that, so we're fine on that one, so that's covered. We are reconciling our payroll agency account. That was a recommendation. That wasn't being done in the past. Well, now we are doing that. We are up through January. State contracts needed to be board approved. That was a recommendation. As you may know, or you may remember from some of our recent meetings, we have been approving state contracts through the board. Same thing with professional services contracts. We've been approving them through the board. What's different now that we didn't do last year is we weren't advertising them in a newspaper. So once the board makes an approval, we have to advertise a professional services contract through a local newspaper, which we've been doing and will do going forward. Item number 6 was specific to the Pupil Services Department. Some of the expenses that were incurred, we were not issuing the purchase order. We were incurring the expense first and then doing the purchase order afterwards. We've communicated to the department. We have them now on the process of preparing the purchase order and then billing against that purchase order. That's the way you're supposed to do it. You always got to have a purchase order first in every department, not just that one. But that's a item of internal controls that we've been working very heavily on, as Principal DeGanzi will attest to. Increasing internal controls over the student activities account. We adopted procedures for the student accounts, actually assigned a different individual that task. Essentially, no checks are to be written without proper documentation, and that is that's one of the key items, and that's the item that's being followed very well, I can report. Cash receipts are deposited immediately. We were having an issue where the cash receipts were hanging around a little bit for a couple days and not going into the bank. Well, we've tightened that one up. The cash reconciliations are done monthly, and I receive a copy of all the reconciliations that are done. And I don't know if you remember, but we had outstanding checks from a couple, probably the year 1. We voided those checks through the board. Not quite 1. But we voided those checks through the board, and we are actively managing that on a monthly basis. If the checks are older than 6 months, we're reviewing the need to void those currently. Let's see, the last item is the DRTRS report. The item is to reconcile it with the district work papers, and worked with the transportation department to make sure that the enrollment matches the DRTRS report. So we're in pretty good shape there, Mr. President. We're handling, some of these items are recurring, so we have to keep on them. But for the most part, all 8 items have been addressed.
Any questions?
What staff member is going to be in charge of monitoring student accounts now? Do all the accounts go into one fund as it had been happening prior?
The athletic director's secretary handles both, excuse me, the student account and the athletic account.
Makes sense.
because he's also in charge of co-curricular programs.
Any other questions? Peter?
I just want to thank Tim. I think he's done a really outstanding job in gaining control of what the audit recommendations we had in the past, the very unhappy situation we had last spring when there were a lot repeated from the year before, and he's really moved aggressively and taken control, and I think we're being very well served by his attention to everything in the business office. So I just wanted to say thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. With that, we can move on to Dr. DeGance's comments, principal's comments.
As Dr. Stromsland mentioned, our robotics team did a wonderful job this weekend. You need to know something about the competition. There were, 63 teams, did you say, Doctor? 63 teams, and we ended up 16th. But that's taken into account. They randomly put our team with other teams called alliances. So if you're a poor team, the alliance can raise you up. If you're a good team, the alliance can bring you down. Since we were one of the better robotics teams, we were brought down a little. When I asked Mr. Kutch what would our standing have been in terms of total points if we were not attached, and I'm not recommending not to attach. That's the name of the game, is cooperation and working together. He said we would have been in second place, not far from first. And he feels quite confident that in early April, our kids will perform in a stellar manner in New York City. So I think they did a great job, as Dr. Stromson indicated. Not only our robotics club, but our fencing team. They've been under the radar, but this weekend, they were in the state championships. Top 16 teams in the state. Very surprising, since they're a very young team. And they did a great job. Unfortunately, they did not do as well as they thought, but I was very pleased given the fact that the teams who beat them were legitimately better than them. But just to get to the states was quite an honor for them. Our basketball team, you might have heard already, our boys lost a game to Piscataway last week, a tough game away in the quarterfinals of the state championship. The girls upset Piscataway in the semifinals of the state sectionals, and tomorrow we'll play Columbia High School at Cranford. We think it's at 7, could be at, thank you, Mr. Faust, could be at 8, and Mr. Faust is right. So it's a doubleheader, and you may ask what else. Our hockey team is in the quarterfinal round of the state championships. They're playing Tenafly at Union. So you can get to see Union, get to Union and see our kids play at 4:45 and have enough time for a little dinner, and then to Cranford to see the state championships. We were there last year against Perth Amboy, and our kids did a great job. And I'm sure they're going to be well prepared for Columbia, win or lose. Our wrestlers competed in the regional championship, with one moving on, Brendan Ard, to the state championships this weekend at Atlantic City. Brendan Jr. captured his second consecutive regional championship. Last year, if you recall, at the states, he was third at 160. This year he's wrestling at 171, and the seedings came out late this afternoon, and he's ranked number 2 at 171. So that hopefully will be very, very positive experience for Brendan. Next week, as Fran mentioned in her blue notes, the pajama game, which is Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. I promise you it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful place. So if you have an opportunity, please join us with the senior citizens on Wednesday also. And believe it or not, Russell to my left will tell you what begins tomorrow, Russell.
HESPAs.
The HESPAs begin tomorrow, the state assessments. And tomorrow they begin with math, which is about 3.5 hours, which is we have to adjust the whole schedule for the math. And then Wednesday and Thursday will be the language arts sections. Those are normally scheduled periods 1 through 4, ending about 10:30, 10:35. The the science HESPA that they gave last year has been succeeded by the biology end of class exam in May, and our kids will also have an Algebra 2 assessment those who take Algebra 2 this year. We'll have that assessment in May. So our kids and all of the kids in the state will be assessed quite a lot in the next couple of months. Dr. Seelig.
Thank you.
Laura had a question.
I'm sorry.
Tom, I have a question about the HESPAs. So the Algebra 2 test and the biology test, is that both going to be freshmen that are?
Not necessarily.
Well, okay, you're right.
Wherever, most of our freshmen
majority?
take biology.
Okay.
99%. We have a few sophomores who may not have been here last year, who are taking it this year. They will be involved in that testing. So who's ever taking biology this year, okay, not advanced placement biology, regular biology, will take that. The Algebra 2, it could be 9th graders, it could be 10th, it could be 11th, depending upon where, if you're taking it at this time.
So advanced placement kids don't take the HESPAs? Or,
Yes, they do.
okay.
Yes,
But-
if they happen to fall in that area. For example, and it's not often, but if a child is taking 9th grade biology and wants to take advanced placement biology, which I can't imagine, he or she would have to also take the end of class exam. Yeah, so
It's
it
a lot
could
of
be.
tests for the kids.
It
yeah.
is, but it's for everyone across the state.
Any other questions? All right, with that, we can move on to the student representative comments. Russ and Dan.
We're going to be having a dinner / battle of bands for Mr. Heath. It's just going to be a fundraiser that the whole community can come out and support. We're going to have dinner in the South Cafeteria, and then afterwards we're going to have the battle of the bands
On April 17th.
on April 17th. And
I think it's starting at 5. The dinner's from like around 5 to 6, and then the bands will start playing around 6 to 8. So if you're not interested in rock music, you can just go for the dinner, and then I think the younger kids can go to the battle of the bands.
And that's also going to be incorporated in Spirit Week, which is April 14th to 18th. So we'll be decorating the hallways on the 17th.
And we're also doing the action auction, like I mentioned before, because that's been postponed numerous times. And we have Powder Puff coming up late in May, and we're going to be holding sign-ups in April after spring break. And for the class reports, for the senior GLC is having a fashion show this Thursday, and we're being sponsored by like Champs, Cachet. I'm not really sure of all the stores, but we have a lot of stores donating clothes, and I think everyone here should come out and support the cause, and you can win a lot of prizes from the raffle tickets, such as signed helmets by like a NFL football player. Students can win prom tickets. You can win a basket full of Warrior wear clothing, so it should be good. It's this Thursday at 7 o'clock.
We're also having a basketball tournament on the 17th. That'll be faculty and students.
Yeah, is that one? 10.
10 of the players on the student team will be the 5 starters from the boys team, the 5 starters from the girls team, and the other 15 players for the students will be whoever.
Seniors that sign up.
Yeah, it'll be just seniors. And then just a side note, room 400, we're still feeling the heat a little bit. It's pretty toasty in there. And room 23C has mold in the corner, like a lot.
Really?
Yeah, it's like a little
Which one?
forest. 23C, it's in the special services department.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, or any questions, rather? No. Laura?
Okay, my question is, were you guys part of the readathon that they had this past week?
I was not.
I was actually sick on that day, so
Okay.
I didn't hear too many positive reviews of it.
I think if the scale of it was a little too large, if they had maybe scaled it down to groups of 50 instead of 300 kids, it would have been a little better. So I think it was just so impersonal because kids went to the 5-minute presentation, just sat down for the rest of the day. So I think if kids got a little more involved, like longer presentations or whatever, that's what I heard from a lot of people.
No, I would definitely welcome student input on that. Thank you very much.
Well,
With that, we can, thank you. Any other questions? With that, we can move on to the committee reports. We have 4 committees: Finance and Operations, Building and Grounds, Co-Curricular Policy, I'll give you a brief update on the policy before this, but we're also going to have in board discussions some time to talk about policy, so I'll keep my comments brief there, and then we'll have more time to talk later. Why don't we start with the finance and operations, Ron?
Thanks, Paul. Tim really said most of what I want to say on the budget, but I think in our and members of the board and the administration, in getting word out about the budget, I think they're really can concisely be stated, and we're going to get you the information on this. But for the past 5 years, this year's budget will, by significant amounts, contain the smallest tax increase and the smallest operating increase in the last 5 years. The operating increase will be about 6.1%, the tax at 4%. Almost, the averages have been almost twice that for both those categories. Very, very important, I think. And with that, it's important to say that we're projected, I think, for about 100 student increase for next year. Number two, of the about $2 million that we're actually increasing the budget, and if you take the budget, it's a shade over $30 million, and 6% is about a $2 million, approximately $2 million increase from this current year compared to next year's budget. If you look at our increases, health insurance, salary increases, and utilities, those three categories virtually take up almost all that $2 million increase. So they're really, very limited new initiatives, new programs, new staffing. I mean, I think the staffing increase is less than a handful of new positions. So I think it's very, very important. And also, as Jerry pointed out, our SAT scores have been going up. So we've seen, in terms of bang for the buck, doing more with less. And really, this board is very, very cognizant and aware of difficult financial times, not just in the state of New Jersey, but in the communities that we serve. So I think we can really be proud in terms of what we're in the communities we represent. So that's really what I wanted to say, and we're going to have information printed out in the newsletters and things like that. But I think it's very important, when you speak to members of your towns, to have these really important bullet points, very accessible. So that's really all I want to say on that.
Good. Anything else? Any other comments?
You mean on finance?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, just
I think
longer
we've done
term,
that.
nothing.
Okay.
I mean, really, there are other things, but I think for all of us, April 15th. I mean, this is past the budget.
Okay.
I mean, there's nothing more important work of the finance committee, and everyone's worked very hard.
I would suggest we put together a short kind of talking points for the budget, bullet points, and give them to the board members so we can all be saying and talking about the same kinds of concepts here.
I have another idea, Fran, that maybe Fran could do it. I just thought about that. In terms of our media plan, Fran, now that we send, for example, these meetings, the DVDs are sent to the local cable. I think it's probably not a bad idea, Fran, for maybe you and Tom to put together maybe a 15-minute presentation, to tape it,
Budget video.
and give it to the Long Hill cable, the Warren cable station, and the Watchung cable stations. So, there are people during the course of the next couple of weeks that are flipping around the dial. Doesn't hurt to have that.
Budget videos we've done in the past.
What?
We've done budget videos in the past, and that might certainly not be a bad idea.
Well, let's go right to the cable, so it doesn't really cost anything, and they're always looking for some programming. I think, to the extent we get that message out, can't hurt.
Not only cable, but on our website.
Yeah. Maybe to have it's not, I guess it's not a podcast,
Usually-
Bernie, but
We do
people
one.
want to click budget.
It's
If they click
it's
budget,
streaming video.
yeah, so if they click budget, you
Yep.
can have a,
We usually make them about 7 to 8 minutes. That seems to be the.
yeah, everyone's attention span after that.
Okay, any questions? Laura?
I just had a comment I wanted to kind of piggyback on that. I was talking to Liz George about the video earlier today, and she just happened to mention that the times that they were shown, because I guess they're shown 12:30 and 12:30. And she mentioned the reason behind that was because they've been showing the basketball games. And she said now that basketball season is over, that,
They get a
the
better time
timing,
slot.
we're going to get a better time slot, so.
Well, that's good to know. That's great.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? With that, we can move on to buildings and grounds.
All right, I'll try to keep this under 7 or 8 minutes.
Attention span.
We're still awaiting DCA approval on the TV studio area, but everything looked good according to Don. I don't know if we got that since our meeting Thursday. Nothing.
Not this Thursday.
The pit lift, same way, DCA. Still going back and forth with them on 1 or 2 items. The big one was on Thursday, when after our meeting, Cavett was here. And Don and Russ kind of like took him by the arm and walked him through the place. And next thing you know, he had people here. ACT was on site. They resolved a number of fire alarm issues, and lo and behold, I believe you have the NFPA 72 certification on the alarm system. So that was a big target on our, that we wanted to address with them, because the movement by them was very slow on the alarm system. We finally got that together. On top of that, Cavett released ACT to work with us now, pretty much on an as-call basis, so
That's
we
right.
can get our system, get Russ and them acclimated to the alarm system and the programs. So a lot happened on Thursday and Friday last week as far as Cavett and ACT in regards to that. On top of that, HVAC, we met with York, resolved a number of issues, some of them good, some of them, not in our favor, but at least we're sitting down talking to them and getting that moving as far as warranty issues and startup and responsibilities. So in a few days, all of a sudden, bang, it was like somebody shot everybody out of a cannon, and they were here doing stuff. So we had a lot of things happening. The issues with the heat that we're experiencing are still balancing issues that we're going through. And MSC is trying to resolve them as they go through all the units. So we may still have some cold areas and some hot areas, but it is being addressed. It's just taking a while. The foyer floor is still moving forward and on schedule. And is there anything else, Tim, that was pretty,
No, that's pretty much it.
yeah.
No,
So,
the fire alarm was the big piece.
yeah, that was a big one.
And I think President Tom Byrne, I think, was out today.
Oh, he was?
Fire
Awesome.
inspector.
That's great. That was a big one on his list of things that he wanted in hand, and it's been a long time coming. So I think Russ and myself and Tom will feel a lot more at ease now that that's in his hands and on file. So that was big.
Okay, any questions? All right, thank you. Pete, co-curricular?
Co-curricular met, there were 5 items discussed. One was the sophomore teams. Mr. Saratello reported back to the committee, as he was asked to do. He surveyed more than 50 schools regarding sophomore teams. We found that of the 50, none have sophomore teams other than maybe football. And they are part of the program, and in that if they have a number of kids and they have the opportunity to play other schools, they do occasionally, but to implement a completely sophomore team and schedule takes away from the freshman and JV and varsity teams because of the necessity to hire coaches and have an independent schedule. So at this point in time, it is the feeling of the committee that no sophomore teams be developed as such. This came up for discussion, admission for having students possibly pay for admission to the winter activities, as well as a discussion of, and a survey of what other schools charge for admission by students and adults. Mr. Sartella will report back to the next, at the next co-curricular meeting. The ads for, or how are we doing on the development of a program to sell ads for the Flex Media fence? I see in our blue notes that that has been discussed by someone, a committee or someone, and it is the recommendation of the co-curricular committee that that begin very, very soon, because if that fence is going up and games are going to start within the next month, there's a great deal of pressure on someone to have those panels sold. So that needs to be looked at and acted upon very, very quickly.
Peter?
Yes.
Just if you don't mind, Fran, to that end, we have 2,000 kids in the school, so maybe, some parents own a business, or they work for, a larger company. It might not hurt, Fran, if we can put on one page, Peter, how much the sign will cost, what, to make, and so, if you're interested, call Nick Saratella, because, listen, I have 2,000 kids, I would think there got to be 50 kids whose parents, maybe own a local business, they work for, a larger company, and
Might get a few.
and might be, we might get a few leads that way.
Good idea.
Number 4, one of the items discussed were the budget cuts in athletics as the new budget was developed and presented. There were some cuts in athletics. And the capital improvement recommendations by Mr. Saratella were cut from the budget. They included the restrooms for the football field, permanent restrooms, excuse me, the improvement of the press box, the resurfacing of the track. A discussion took place regarding the track, and that down the road, in the very, very near future, the resurfacing of the track becomes of utmost importance, because as we said last time, each year that track is not resurfaced. Now, the potential for injury grows significantly to our athletes as well as anyone using the track on a regular basis for conditioning or recreational activities or whatever. And the 5th item for discussion, which is on the board agenda tonight, was presented by Dr. DeGancy, that the position of Frisbee coach be cut in half in terms of the pay, and that 2 people be hired for the price of 1. I think he has discussed that, and Fran has discussed that with the association. So I would ask Dr. DeGancy to elaborate on that, please.
We have the Spring Frisbee program, which is the major program, and Mike Porter has been the head coach for the past year. And he came to me asking if we could have Andrew Tranzano as a volunteer. And I said, fine, we have to go through the same procedures. Andrew is a teacher in our school system now for 6 years or so. And I said, fine, we just have to have a board approved volunteer. And I said, are you sure you want to volunteer, or do you want to split the responsibilities? It's up to you. We'll do it either way. And he said, you know what? I'd rather, if it's possible, have 2 coaches, and we'll split the difference. So it's a 10 to 14 stipend. Mike was on step 11, so since Mike has done it for a year, he would get 6 11s, and Andrew would get 5 out of the 11. So they have equal responsibility, because usually a volunteer does not have responsibility over the kids. This gives them equal responsibility. We're not asking for more money.
Peter, do you have to, in something like that, do you have to get a union clearance?
We got the
We did.
union.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
That's my question.
Yeah, we did. They're fine with it.
That concludes our report.
Hey, can you tell me sophomore teams how many did you say were in the county? Or
Nick surveyed 50 schools in the area, and none have sophomore teams per se. They may play an occasional sophomore game where the schedule and time and availability of field and coaches permit.
I think the question that we have to answer is, I mean, that was one idea, but how do we get more kids, or what's the opportunity for kids to get into sports if they want to? And how do we maximize that chance for them to participate? It's a big school. You can only have a number of kids that are even able to make it into the varsity programs. And so I think as a school program, is trying to figure out how do we maximize that opportunity for kids.
And that's one of the.
So that was one idea. Maybe
Right.
there's some others that are out there that will help us do that. And I think as a committee, you might want to look at it.
The question posed was, can we develop and sustain a sophomore program, and in how many sports? Well, if you, first of all, the teams we would play are very,
Right.
limits our schedule. If that is the case, then the cost incurred to develop a sophomore program becomes substantial because of what teams are given the opportunity to develop a sophomore schedule. Is it soccer, is it basketball, is it softball, is it football, or whatever? So those things were part of the discussion. But to come back with a recommendation, the committee didn't find or feel that we had a recommendation that we could handle economically as well as feasibility-wise to implement a completely sophomore program and compete against other schools.
Right. The point I was making on that wasn't to say we should do sophomore teams. It is as a school, we should look at ways to try to maximize opportunities for kids to participate in sports.
Right, and
Those that want to. And because if you look at it, we have 2,000 kids. If you divide it in half, it's 1,100 boys in the school. There's only about 15 that even make it onto a basketball team at any one point in time. It's a very small percentage if they're playing on like the varsity or JV level. So the question I had, and I think just as a board, I'd like to see if there aren't ways that we can help enhance that opportunity for kids, or enhance the number of opportunities for kids to participate in sports.
It was discussed, and I think Tom mentioned that there were some opportunities developed by Terry McConnell and maybe others to intramurals to provide that opportunity for participation. So that, it was mentioned, it was discussed, and again, I refer to Tom to elaborate more on what was said there, that Terry did run some of those types of programs to help get these youngsters involved. One of the drawbacks of a bigger school is of a school of 2,200 compared to 1,100 schools. There's only one team as opposed to two, as opposed to a school of 500 or 800.
Right.
Three teams, three different schools, which then enables the opportunity for 15 or 25, kids to, not 25, but 15 or 30 kids to participate in a interscholastic activity, as opposed to when you have a school of 2,200, only one team represents that school. So those are the things that were discussed, and it's one of the drawbacks of a big school.
I recall about 2 years ago in the co-curricular group, we did discuss intramurals and trying to do something. And I think that's kind of the model that would not cost too much, but if you could get like, say the boys basketball, pick 2 days a week, girls basketball 2 days a week, kind of divide it up. Don't make it a 5-day-a-week thing, but make it 2 days a week. And get different groups to come out and have them choose up sides when they get there, just like they did when we were kids. Not too organized, but just have somebody supervising their activity, and do it with a lot of different kind of things that are useful. For instance, in the winter, there are probably 5 or 6 things you could do with those gyms. So in my mind, that's the way to really get more kids involved. You avoid the time for the kids traveling and the extensive investment in time, and you save the board from basically replicating one of the transportation schedules that we now have. So I just feel in my heart that that's something that has to be done. I'm not saying this year, but that's got to be the answer. Make the sports fun, make it like pickup basketball, pickup baseball, things like that are more fun for the kids and also gives them exercise.
I think the committee would support that, but the committee is not one to develop. We can suggest it, and
Maybe our student representatives could work to get some kind of a survey. You know, how many people would like to have something like that after school?
If you build it, they will come.
Yeah, no, I would like to add to that, too. I think that whatever we can do intramural-wise and encourage our kids to be active is very beneficial. But, you know, whatever we can also do on, you know, with you know, the sport teams that exist to create as many opportunities for our athletes as possible. There's a lot of terrific athletes that get cut from our teams. You know, so whatever we can do to create opportunities for our kids to play their sports that they've been playing for years and years, I think would be a great benefit.
I think we all agree with that. But again, in this situation, the most practical way to achieve that is through intramurals as opposed to interscholastic additional teams. And I agree with Bernie in that.
Tom, how many kids participate, if you add up, you know, all the teams we have, if there's a freshman, JV, you know, and varsity, I mean, how many positions? Now, obviously, there's some kids who are gifted athletes who, you know, are varsity, you know, spring, fall, and winter. But if you added up the slots, I mean, wouldn't it be, you know, certainly over 1,000 slots? I mean, you know, do we have a JV football team?
Yes, we do.
So you got freshman, JV, varsity.
There's a freshman football team, and there's a combined JV varsity, but the JV sometimes plays separately, so they have a separate schedule. But they're really mushed together as one team.
Right, so I'm just saying, if you add up all the sports we have over the 3 seasons, how many teams there are, then boys, then girls, I mean, it's you know, over, what maybe better, what percentage of the 2,200 kids participate in, you know, an organized sport that's offered by the high school?
What I need to do to give you an accurate answer is Mr. Saratello can give it to me in a minute because he has the numbers for every single sport and how many kids participate. It's probably, because remember, there are some sports where by nature you don't have limits. Football, you can have 100, 150.
Okay, track. Yeah, no, I understand. So,
Yeah, so I'm going to say, and I can give you that on our next meeting,
yeah.
I'm going to say maybe 40%. Because remember, we have about 86% of our kids involved in some sort of extra co-curricular activity, about 86. A good percentage of those are athletics, but I need to get the exact numbers before.
Then if you add, you know, the marching band kids, the cheerleaders, I mean, you know, if you add all, you know, the active, you know, types of, it's a large part of the student
For
body.
co-curriculars.
Yeah.
With your specific question, I have to ask.
program.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe you could break it out and give us both of those.
I can,
full
that's not
co-curricular
hard.
as well as just athletic.
And then a follow-up to that is, you know, what percentage of our kids in different grades, you know, continue with sports, you know, and, you know, how many freshmen as opposed to upper grade kids have opportunities to participate. And, you know, to, you know, make sure that, you know, we have player development so that the kids do have opportunities to move on.
Usually it develops as a pyramid. It usually develops, there's more opportunity for freshmen. And as you go to the sophomores, some kids by attrition or, you know, choice go elsewhere. And then some are eliminated again because it becomes a pyramid usually for each, not each, but many of the sports where limited numbers of participants can compete on a regular basis as opposed to come sit on the bench for 99 minutes out of 100 as opposed to, you know, other activities where you run heats or number of events, the opportunity is greater. So it usually is a pyramid type thing.
Right, but a lot of sports have a freshman, JV, and then varsity, but, you know, how many freshmen are, you know, beyond their freshman team and playing, you know, up JV, varsity?
You have 15 freshmen and each year, and if they aren't reduced in number by some means, at any given point in time, you're gonna have 45 kids on this sophomore, junior, and senior level, in those levels, and you can't have a basketball team with 45 kids when you have a varsity and JV. So that has to be whittled or reduced. It's just nature. of
Yeah,
it. It's the
The reason I'm
situation.
saying that, so if, let's say Tom comes back and says, we got 1,000 kids, of the, half the school's participating in some range of, sports, freshman, JV, whatever. So you say, okay, we have 1,000 kids who are not, some by choice and some who perhaps would want to do something. Then maybe what we could do is put together some type of student survey. The athletic department could put it together and really get an idea of, those kids who don't participate in a sport, how many would like to participate in some athletic endeavor. And then once you get the data, you can see, to Bernie's idea, your idea, then we could maybe, have something after school, I don't know, weightlifting or, the winter basketball or just, aerobics, I don't know, whatever it is, workout classes. So let's see, because of this conjecture, I don't know whether we're talking about, I'm being silly range, 10 kids that feel they'd like to do something or 300 kids. And then depending on that, then you could sort of see what the interest levels are. We could suggest it, and maybe by next winter, which is obviously a good time, see, what direction, with Nick's, input you'd want to go.
I'm going to turn it over to Pete. Pete's been waiting patiently to ask a question.
I'm sorry, Pete, I just needed a point of information. I think it was the second thing you mentioned, the committee was looking into winter activities.
Admission.
Yes. Are you talking about basketball games, ice hockey games?
Basketball, ice hockey,
Okay.
wrestling,
All right, I
or
just wasn't-
whatever, where in some cases,
And what do we do now?
some people are charged. And in some schools, students have a fee, a reduced fee, and we don't. Do we as a board want to consider?
We don't have a charge or we don't have a reduced charge?
No, we don't have a fee for students.
Okay.
Right, there's
Correct?
no admission
But in
charge.
many schools, in fact, most do charge, whether it's a flat rate or a discount rate or whatever, the season tickets or whatever. And most schools, I would venture to say, the admission for adults is probably double of what we pay as adults going into a contest. Some have senior citizens rates, some have flat rates, they sell season tickets. Is it something that the board might want to consider, raising the admission charge by Watchung Hills to be comparable to other schools? These were thoughts thrown out and discussed. So that's why I throw them out and mention it here. But I wanted to, does that answer your question?
Thank you, Pete.
Go back to Laura's, I think, the question, and maybe Rob's. Number of participants of freshman athletes, even though they may not participate in that particular sport beyond the first year for whatever reason. What is the percentage of the freshman student athletes who continue to participate but in another sport? Is it the same? Whether it be, we have 1,000 freshman players. We can't move all those kids up. We said it's an impossibility to do. But as they are choosing to go elsewhere or eliminated from that particular sport, do they continue to participate in other sports? So is the participation rate by class the same, less, or more as we move up to sophomore, junior, and senior? I think that's your question, but it goes back to what Laura's question is too. And Bernie's comment, involvement, maybe not in the same activity, but student involvement through the course of their high school career.
Pete, going back to your concept about the pyramid, and obviously as the kids get up, it's more, there's attrition and it's, harder to move up the system. But my question is, if you have a lot of freshmen, you have a freshman team and then you have freshmen also on JV teams, varsity teams, that is less spots for our, our upperclassmen. So you could have, someone who's, been an athlete, all, in a sport their entire life, they get cut for, senior year, because let's say there could be, a freshman on that team. I just think that it's something that should be.
I think each coach wrestles with that and each sport wrestles with that. But by the nature of the fact that there are competition levels and to compete, to be competitive. There may be times when there are freshmen who are outstanding and who play 4 years of varsity athletics, whether it be basketball or soccer. And to say because a student came in as a freshman, he's guaranteed a spot all the way through, you can't do that and be competitive in the real world with the other schools who are taking the, quote, best athletes as they progress, whether they start as a freshman or they develop as a sophomore, develop as a junior. So it is the competitiveness of the sport and the fact that we are now competing in the state championship in hockey and swimming and all. It doesn't happen if an outstanding sophomore athlete or freshman athlete is prevented from playing and contributing because he's a freshman or sophomore. Because someone has been in the program 3 years. I hear you, and the coach hears you, and he agonizes or she agonizes over that as much as the kid and the parent. But when it comes down to, well, we didn't play our best athletes. Why? Well, because Johnny was in the program for 4 years and he deserves to play. Well, does he deserve to play? Yes. But does he deserve to play ahead of a kid who was clearly better? Especially when you keep score and your team moves on based on the ability of the participants, not the grade level of the participants.
This enters into a discussion about philosophy of
Right.
athletics and what we're going to be doing
Right.
and what we should be doing in that area, which is beyond what your report was for.
Right.
So why don't we move on to the, if I can, gently move on to the next topic. Is this a closing comment, or is this open?
No, if we're talking co-curricular, I'd like to just ask a question.
Oh,
Pete?
I'm sorry, go ahead, yeah.
Pete, I received something in the package this week that deals with the behavior of our fans. Did your committee discuss that at all?
We didn't, but we have informally. What is
I'd
your
I'd just
question?
like to add some input to your committee, because I'm not on the committee.
We discussed in particular, there, for example, incidents of like hockey where behavior was reported back, or other kinds of behavior where it was reported back to the committee. We always talk about that in co-curricular. So the question of, things that happen in hockey was raised, and the behavior has gotten much better. For example, if the one incident, there was nobody from administration was there, I believe, and the kids took a little too much liberties or said comments. That was reported back, so we followed up to make sure that that wasn't being done anymore. So we talk about behavior at these games and events.
Yes.
That does come up in our committee all the time.
I'd like to thank, I think, Fran for including this article over the weekend. I'd just like to register my strong distaste for hearing about a group of fans that when our team clobbers somebody else, they rub it in after the game with this particular cheer. I have no problem with them cheering loudly during the game, but when you've got a losing team and you're a parent or a kid walking out of our facility to leave this kind of a bad taste, I think it's low class. It's not the way you act in your adult life. When you're a winner, you should do it with class. I believe this cheer is classless. So I'd just like to give you my input to the next committee meeting, but I don't know if anybody else feels that way.
Have
but,
you gone to the game,
we've heard
Fran?
about the Rutgers game with the Army. That kind of stuff is just, to me, it's unacceptable.
Have you been to a game to watch that?
I'm just
That's what I'm
saying,
saying.
this particular
After
cheer.
the game, most of the kids get together, and it's a contest between the two groups. A number of times they've come out of the gym, and the opposing team's athletic director, coaches and stuff, can't believe how much fun they had and how much excitement they've stirred within their own school because of this happening. Yes, there's a fine line, but our staff is there constantly watching it to make sure it doesn't get out of hand. And I've been to 5-6 games, and at no time did I ever think they were out of line. And, I enjoyed it. It's almost entertainment. The other schools, Ridge, Plainfield, everywhere we've gone, they've actually raised the student excitement within their own schools because of this group. So, yes, you have to monitor it, and I think our staff has done a great job. The kids haven't gotten out of line, maybe once, and it was corrected immediately. And, you know, I didn't see a great problem with it.
Bernie,
So-
the answer, I need,
Go ahead.
I need to address what you said. I echo what Lou said. These guys, Tom, Fran, Tara, Nick, whoever's there, and all the guys have done one heck of a job, and the positive comments by the, quote, demoralized, whatever this person said about their student athletes is minuscule. The compliments, I echo what Lou said, by the visiting fans and parents have been overwhelming. What a great group of kids, well-behaved, sportsmanlike. And there have times when these guys have addressed them, gone, or you're out of here, things like that. The overwhelming support of our group of kids by the parents and fans of other schools is phenomenal. And they all look to try to emulate what has happened here and talk about it. What a great thing. And how quote, intimidating it is and becomes a home court advantage. They say, we would like to start this. In fact, Bayonne came up here with their 35 girls who were in the same fashion. Black shirts, bows on there, and emulating the chairs, or, you know, and when our kids, in a sportsmanlike manner, addressed their team, the fans impromptu start responding in like with some of similar cheers about Watchung or against Watchung for their team. So granted, not everybody's going to be pleased and happy with everything. They've received complaints from individual parents. We've listened, they've listened, and that's why they're there and monitoring. So to say it's Bush, unsportsmanlike or anything, you have to see it before you make those comments and judgments. And talk to the majority of people, not the majority, but many of the people who have been on the receiving end, winning team, losing team. It's all in good fun.
Pete's been, again, very patient.
I'm sorry, but
We'll move it on.
That's okay, but look, I've got to express a different point of view.
Okay.
Because I just, you can be sportsmanlike. I don't see pointing at that, those people over there and saying losing team as being sportsmanlike in any sense of the word. I read this article, and I've got to tell you, I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed that I'm on a school board where we allow our students to do this. And I frankly think it should be stopped. This season's over, that's fine. But I think allowing our students to point at students from another school and chant losing team at them is the antithesis of good sportsmanship. And I don't think it should be allowed in our school. And I think, you know, I understand your point that maybe context changes it somewhat, but the context that came through in this article, to me, was nothing but embarrassing.
everybody has their own point of view, but you gotta see it and experience it before.
We've all had our chance to express our beliefs on this, so let's move on. Perhaps for next season, we can have another discussion in advance of the season to actually figure out if there's anything we want to try to do with it. I'll give you a brief update on the policy committee. We brought 4 policies to you tonight. 2 of them are new. One of them is the use of school's facility, and the other one is inappropriate staff conduct. The inappropriate staff conduct isn't exactly new. It's been around. I think this is the 4th time we've brought this policy to this board. The one that you have tonight, and which we'll have a chance to talk about, is very close, if not the same as that which you saw in August. We have about 26 policies that are in the mandated policy list that we're working through. that are in, we have them, they exist now. They have to undergo what we think are going to be fairly minor modifications. We're going to bring them forward to you. We'll give you a chance to read them, actually, become familiar with the policy, as we then take them through the minor policy by minor changes. Most of them are upgrades or changes to the legislative citations, which are contained within the policy. So they're fairly minor in nature. There's about 26 of those that we'll be bringing back to you then as we go through policy. Tonight you have 2 of those that are in that category, job descriptions and employment of chief school of the CSA. We met, like I said, we met twice, I think, one of which was to try to set in place, and then one to set in place the motion for the 26, as well as then to try to finalize the use of facilities policy and get the final feedback on the inappropriate staff conduct. And the last thing we did then was to decide on how quickly we're going to try to bring them forward to you, okay? Pete and Laura, do you have anything else you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to our discussion that we had on the facilities usage policy. We've had a lot of discussion, obviously, on this policy, and it's going to affect a lot of people. But I just wanted to add some comments that I sent a late email to the committee, and I'll just read that.
Do you want to wait till we get, we're going to have a board discussion on it.
Okay,
We can
sure,
go
I
through
can
it
wait
in
till at that
detail
time, sure, sure.
Okay, so everybody has the context. And
That's perfect.
any other, okay, with that, we can move on to, were there any other committees that met that I don't have?
Do you want to do the CSA under other business?
We're going to do that under, we're going to do that under board discussion. Okay. It's not on the list right now, we'll add it to the list. Okay.
Paul, I just wanted to, again, invite everybody to the PTO dinner dance. I know the Fran has forms. If anybody wants to come sit at my table, I'll be there. I sent in my forms. It's going to be a fun community night out, and I can get you forms if you want that too. So hopefully we'll get some board members at the dinner dance. Thank you.
Okay. With that, we'll move on to the first opportunity for the public to comment. If you choose to comment, please give us your name and your address in 5 minutes. Can you, and also could you come to the podium, because be aware that you're on microphone and we're videotaping. This will end up in eventually the broadcast.
Okay. My name's Eric Harvey. I live in Warren. I have a sophomore in the high school, a senior in the high school, and an 8th grader coming into the high school. I really came to talk about the policy, the use of school facilities policy. Let me just digress for a second and talk about the basketball games, because I have been to a bunch of them, and they've actually been great. My kids really like it. The enthusiasm that got built up. We're not a school that's known for having a lot of school spirit, and this is different. And I don't think the other teams are really taking it so offensive. I think that they really do. There was one game I was at where our guys were chanting, the other school was chanting against us, and it was like a war of words. And it was very funny. Both sides of kids were having a blast. And so you just really got to go. What they said, you really got to go see it, because it's pretty special. But I did come to talk about your use of school policy. I am on the board of Watching Hill Soccer. Our program basically services the 4 feeder schools, 4 feeder districts that you have. We have programs that start in 1st or 2nd grade, actually kindergarten too, and actually go through the high school. We actually, in the spring, I'm coaching this basically a sophomore team, which is hopefully most of your varsity soccer players upcoming in the next few years. I haven't seen the policy, but I've kind of heard some rumors about it where you're going to start charging for fields. We're a nonprofit organization. For us to, last year was the first year we got permission to use your turf field on Sundays when nobody else was using it. And we used it for free. There was no cost to you because you didn't have to turn out, when we weren't using it at night when the lights were on. I can understand if we were using it at night, there was a fee because you're using electricity. But the field just wasn't being used before that. and we ran games there. We have about 24, 26 travel teams this spring, ranging from, whatever youth, all the way through the high school. We have, I think we have 3 high school teams this year in this spring. So in the fall, they play for the high school. In the spring, we put together soccer teams. I'm not 100% sure, how lacrosse and youth football and all that. I'm sure they have this. They don't know about this, and they have the same concerns that I do. Because if we had to add, if we lost the field now, we'd have a problem with where we're going to play and how many teams, because we have only a certain amount of daylight hours to play. And if we had to pay for them, our fees would go up incredibly. We have been working with the town of Warren. Actually, soccer, the Watching Hills soccer program and the Watching Hills lacrosse program, both private programs, each gave a $100,000 donation to the town of Warren, and that was, so we paid $200,000 out of the $500,000 that went into the new turf field, which, by the way, from the last schedule I saw, your high school is using. So I don't know if you end up charging us, I'm going back to the town and say we should charge you, because you're planning on using it every day, 5 days a week in the early afternoons. Plus the prices, I understand that the proposed price for the turf field is $500 for a 3-hour period. I can go down to Soccer Center for $225 and rent the whole field down there. I don't do that because we can't afford it. Our fees we'd have to double our fees. And I think you really need to look at these different organizations, soccer, lacrosse, youth football. I'm not sure what other, in-town programs, and put us in a category that's different from the high, paying high fees. I can understand if we're using a gym, if we go to right now the Warren schools have, which we primarily use, have no fees. I hope they're not planning to have any fees. I don't know if it's under discussion or not. However, when we use the indoor facilities over the winter to train, they charge us, I don't know, $40 an hour, whatever the custodial fee is. That's fair. I mean, if we're using your building and you're bringing a custodian in, you got to pay for that. But like the turf field on Sundays, why did we pay and put in that turf field? Otherwise, I want my brick back. I mean, it should be used all the time, as much as possible, all the facilities. Plus all these different programs really are the reason that your school teams are getting better. The soccer team's getting better, the basketball teams because of all the rec programs. We're really your feeder programs. So you really have, if there was somebody coming from New Providence and wanted to use your field, hey, charge them. But these are all the same people that pay the taxes, and you're talking about starting intramural programs. We're essentially doing that. I mean, certainly the soccer's doing that. So.
Okay, thank you.
Paul,
I would tell you, just so you're aware, we are reading a policy tonight. We go through actually it's a multi-step process. We're in the kind of the final stage. This is the first reading. This is the first time this full board will have had a chance to discuss it. And then we'll go in, if there are no major changes to it, then it would go to a second reading and approved. If there are major changes, it'll go back to the works for further discussion. Given the amount of discussion that's already occurred on this policy in the policy committee, I expect there'll be a lot of discussion on it tonight also. So my guess is it's probably going to go through the works a few times.
And I would ask that you solicit the input from, I know the football program uses your fields all the time. And,
we talked about
that. I mean, I happen to hear about this. Right. And see it on the website. And the one thing about it's great to be able to print this off the website, but all those additional notes, like with the fees, that's not on there. But I think it would be really good to have representatives of each club come in and
yeah, right. We talked about the need for that.
We're all working on this. We're all doing this, working for the same kids.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Do you want to say, Rob? You had a comment?
well, I know we're going to discuss this tonight, and I haven't looked at it too carefully. I know we're going to look at it tonight, and I think perhaps the discussion when we do it should be a category of perhaps a third classification, which is from nonprofits that are from any of the 4 towns will be a different category than a nonprofit from Chatham who wants to rent it. I mean,
we have that category in there.
And so
that's actually in the policy now, but there's another revision.
Yeah.
we'll talk about that when we get to policy discussion. Let's just hold it for now, because we're only like.
I think
Why don't we,
good points.
why don't we move on? We can actually move right into the discussion. Seeing there's no other public to talk here. We'll move on into the next part of the agenda, which is in the board discussion. I'm going to ask that we add one other item into this. And, we have a discussion of policy, and we'll kick off with that. I asked Fran to prepare a small thing on New Jersey QSAC, which we're going into monitoring this year. And the last, we'll see what time it is. And then the last piece, which we really do need to get onto, is the CSA evaluation. It's absolutely urgent that we do this tonight, not to do the evaluation, but to talk about the process so we can get into how we're going to do that. We are bound by law to complete that process by April the 30th. Practically speaking, that means we have to complete it before April the 15th, which is the election date. So if we want to have the sitting board do that, actually conduct that, we would have to actually complete that work before then. The actual evaluation can go up to the 30th, but we as a board have to have completed our generation of a summary document and what we want to say at that point in time, okay? So, and Jerry will fill us in on with that. So with that, we can launch into the fun and games of talking about the policies. Like I mentioned to you, there's 4 policies in front of you. There's facilities use, we'll start with that one, the inappropriate staff conduct, and then the 2, which are fairly minor in nature, the job descriptions and employment of chief of the CSA, Chief School Administrator. The way the facilities use policy goes, if I can just give you a bit of a briefer on it. It's been around, worked on a variety of different forums. A lot of the work on this started with Strauss Esme. There's kind of standard policy. We took pieces of that. We took pieces out of what we had in the past. We took pieces out of what Warren has in their policies, what we had in Watchung, and we listened a lot. And the administration has massaged this a few hundred times by now, trying to make sure that everything that is in here should be in here. Basically, just so we have to kind of give you a quick Cook's tour of it, we divide groups into 4 groups. We divide people into 4 groups. First group is, and it's on page 1 of the policy, are essentially people that are directly associated with this high school get first priority. And you'll find out they also get no charge. So if you're like a member of this high school, co-curricular activity, supervised school district staff, nonprofit parents organization like a PTO, or other clubs that are recognized by the Board of Education, that's a group 1, and you get first priority, and you also get no charge. Group 2 are government agencies of the local schools, Greenbrook, Long Hill, Warren, and Watchung, as well as the state of New Jersey. So, for instance, if your town council wants to come up here and have a meeting in the Performing Arts Center, that would be available. They would get the second level of priority. They would then pay for out-of-cost custodial fees, so things like janitorial services, things that we would incur. That's been the position of this board in past discussions, and it's certainly been reflected to the policy committee that the school isn't trying to make money, but the school is not going to incur cost as associated with these outside activities. The group 3 then becomes nonprofit civic community organizations that are located within the sending districts that don't fit into the first 2 categories, and that would be again, and also where the community organization, that is the group that constitutes that organization, 75% of it comes from the sending school, from the 4 sending schools, okay? So that's then the 4th category in there, or the 3rd category in there. And then the 4th category is everything else. In the 3rd category, there's going to be charges as indicated in the fee list at the back of this. It's in Appendix B, B, and C. And then in Category 4, there's they get the same charges. Help me out here, Tim, I can misread this. A rental fee in accordance with Appendix B, right, it's the same thing,
Yeah.
plus charges which are due for group two. So
What?
the idea is two things. You're setting priorities and then you're also setting charges. Okay, so that's the way this is broken out. So how do we prioritize them? Because when people come and say, we want to use the facility, then what order do the people get put into the slot? And then secondly, how much are we going to charge them? There's a number of other conditions in here which talk to things like how long are we going to allow people to schedule the facility in advance so that we don't get people coming in and say, I want to schedule the facility a year from now and tie it up. So we want to have some controls over that. And the other thing we wanted to make sure we had controls over was the duration, how long they could actually schedule it for. So with that, I'm going to just kind of throw it open. I will tell you that we have, basically where we got on this was a point of saying, let's just get it to the full board, let's get some feedback, and then we'll probably end up going back and mushing around a little bit more. So with that, you've already said something. Bernie, I'm going to go down the list.
Just two quick ones. On group two, it doesn't make any sense. Do you mean government agencies and local schools?
Just a second, where are you? Group two? Yes, government agencies or. It should say or.
Or, okay. That does it too.
You're right.
The other one was that the 75% requirement. I recall when my daughter went through the soccer,
Right.
sequence. As you got to the higher grades, sometimes it was impossible to field a full team from the local towns. And I would suggest a little more a little looser requirement there, like 75% would avoid that problem coming up in the future. Most of these programs are well over 75%, but when you get up to the higher ages, it does cause a problem. Or it could cause a problem.
So you're saying you'd like to see the number of smaller than 75%?
No, I'd like it to be like 50%. And that doesn't happen, normally in the, let's say, through the 8th grade.
I think someone on this.
On the same point, though, is that 3 constituent districts? Because you talk about Greenbrook, Long Hill, Warren, and Watchung, but then it says 3 constituent districts.
Well, there are 3 constituent districts, and then we include Greenbrook in them.
We included
But then
Greenbrook as.
but you only put a qualification of 75% on 3.
No, it should have been 4. It should have been both.
Of the
of
4
groups. It should have been the 4 groups.
Sending district.
Or 4 districts.
4 sending districts, right.
Well, there's a technical legal difference
Like, say,
between
3
sending and
constituent
receiving,
and
so I think you
Of
just
the
say
4 districts
the districts
above.
that comprise the high school.
I would say of the 4 districts.
The 4 towns.
We
I
said
mean,
the 4 towns, we
Yeah,
put
that's
all
right.
4 towns in the same
Yeah.
bucket in
Yeah.
group 3, and said 75% of them.
them.
Okay, that was the intent of the policy. I apologize for wording didn't quite get there.
Paul,
After you've read it so many times that you start to miss points, believe me.
Paul,
Yeah.
to Eric's point, I think, I'm gonna make the suggestion, we're kicking this around. I'm not so sure that there's a need, and maybe there is, to separate groups 2 and 3. For example, the soccer association. I mean, Eric raises really excellent points. You got how many kids? 1,200 kids? 1,200 kids, all from the 4 towns, right? So the 3, not most of the 4 towns. And these are taxpayers from our towns. Their kids go to our schools. To me, that's what the fields are for. I mean, and Eric doesn't have, none of us have an objection. I mean, if the kids just show up like this past year, my daughter played, they played the turf field. Now, it's one thing, right, if the kids go inside to use the gym in the winter, and, Tim's calculated it's, with heat, air conditioning, it's, $50 an hour. That's our cost. I mean, and frankly, I'm not so sure, when we say government agencies of, Greenbrook, Long Hill, Warren, that they shouldn't be paying, $40 if that's our cost to use the gym.
They will. They do pay.
Okay, so I just think, whether.
Rob, I just want to bring you to point. The top list there is the priorities. Go down to the second set of bullets. That's where you're going to end up with the fees. So you'll see Group 2 there.
Out of pocket, okay.
Pays the out-of-pocket custodial
Okay.
fees and things like that.
To Eric's point, I think the Pop Warner kids, if they want to use the field, I mean, all those, the basketball, either it's an outdoor field, it doesn't cost us anything, it's just there and the kids show up. Now, not to steal Laura's thunder, maybe there is a different situation. Rob and Laura run a quote nonprofit basketball camp, and it's different than in the sense the soccer association where you have a board of trustees of the people, and really it's not, whereas you can call something nonprofit. Now, I don't know if we want to distinguish between we run a quote nonprofit basketball camp, but really it's private ownership. I don't know if we want to get in that business, but just in terms, to what Eric was saying, and I think the kids from our towns, if they're in one of the, I'll call it, I'm not being legal here, I'm just being, we got the soccer, you got the football kids, you got the lacrosse kids, what other sports we have here, the baseball, whatever it is, that we shouldn't charge them to use any of these facilities unless there's an out-of-pocket charge. And that's why I thought perhaps groups 2 and 3 should be collapsed. Because in essence, we're charging people who are taxpayers in our towns, we don't want to make a profit off those folks. Now, if it's hypothetically, the Chatham soccer team, that wants to rent our space, clearly to me that would be a group 3 nonprofit charge that they should pay the $500 or whatever.
Chatham
That's 4.
would be a group 4.
Well, no.
Yes.
If they're
Unless
nonprofit.
Unless they had 75% of their.
Fine, okay.
Came from our.
Fine, so what I'm just throwing out here is I think
All right,
number
here
2
you
and
go.
3 should be collapsed.
You're saying combine 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Bernie?
Pete-
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Look.
I'll come back.
Come back around later.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Pete actually brought that point up at the policy meeting, about the usage, the different kinds of groups that use the fields. And the point I wanted to make, in addition to communicating any fees that we have to charge, we need to look more closely at the fees that the district is looking to charge and what service the group provides to the community. And passing on fees to cover a cost to community groups that use our facility for the benefits of our students in recreational programs is one thing, but I think the fees as they're currently set in Appendix B would kill a lot of recreational programs, and we need to have another fee structure for, these kinds of groups.
Or no fees, or out of pocket.
Right, just to
Call it
cover
out
our
of pocket.
costs, cover our costs.
I don't think, other than it's, right, if it's our kids, if it's used by our kids, that's, they don't pay because they go to high school. But for those affiliated groups from our towns, it should be, if there's an out-of-pocket, they pay it $40 per hour for air conditioning, heating, for a janitor. But if the field's just there, they're our folks,
Any other comments?
I have a question. I mean, and it's directed at this particular request only because that's what precipitated the discussion. And you have to help me out here. If we are looking at charging this group, I think a total of $5,000. I think that's the number that was bantered about somewheres in discussion. And if
Which group is that, Pete? You said this group.
soccer group that,
Oh, okay.
which I think is initiated this discussion, but in general, other groups as well. But this one particular group, as I look at it, a nominal charge of $5,000. Now, granted, there are kids, but what is generating the ability to donate $200,000 to the community? So if this group, or any group, has the ability to generate enough money to donate $200,000 to the Warren municipal town, the municipality, is it unrealistic to say that they can't afford a $5,000 quote contribution to the school to help maintain the field in its repair and ongoing expenses? You have to help me out.
Peter, you used the good word donation. There's a difference. I mean, I'll just tell you, knowing a little bit about the soccer charges, I don't know, it's like $375 a season. Is that about what it is, Eric? So the 2 seasons. No, I'm saying. Donation. That's right. That a donation means that it's not a mandatory participation fee, where the athletic foundation held fundraisers to help to underwrite the cost of our turf field. Okay, so you're right. They made a donation for the one opposite the middle school. That's a Duderstadt.
We borrowed a lot of money.
No, I understand. But the difference is, Pete, if theoretically you're saying, okay, they had all this money to donate, why can't we charge them? Well, then you start looking, the 300, I will tell you, it doesn't crimp my lifestyle to charge $375 times 2, but I tell you, there are a lot of people in these towns, if the $375 now had to go up to $600, $700 a season, there are a lot of kids that aren't playing soccer or basketball or lacrosse. And we have the fields anyway. That's the point, Pete. Why should we be, as a school, which is a community-based school where people are paying their taxes to for their kids to go to our school, why should we ask them to pay more? They live in the town. They're already paying through their taxes.
I just want to ask a question because I wasn't part of it, when this thing was derived. But what was the basis for the charge? I mean, I have to assume there's some costs that go along with, as Pete said, maintaining the fields or just keeping them. But was there a basis for coming up with these numbers, or was it just that, we felt we wanted to start somewhere, or just so I can understand more where we're coming from?
The rental fees or
the fee structures?
The fee structure, we looked at other school districts in the area. I mean, that was basically how we looked at, the field, for example. Some of the costs we've already had, we've been charging. Some of the things have been established. But essentially, anyone who has a turf field, there's not that many in Somerset County or even in the state, but that's where we got those from. Those are on the lower end. The other charges are our past practice and things that other schools are charging. Nothing more complex than that.
Is there any way to understanding what the cost to really maintain these fields on an ongoing basis, so that, for example,
well, a couple of excellent
Lou was saying you
points.
have to do things like after so many times you have to brush the
That
field.
field
and
has to
there's-
be maintained just like any other. It's just not a run-on, run-off. You have issues to keep the
Well, the turf
sub-turf
field,
down.
the turf field has a shelf life. I mean, that's,
Well,
you can
that's what
start
I'm
there.
asking for. So any usage really has,
Yeah.
maybe it's not $500, maybe it's something that goes
The more,
forward.
right, and the more you use it, the quicker it's gonna run out. I mean, it's simple as that. It's not rocket science. If the field, if you use the field, the more you use that field, the quicker it's going to lose its,
Resilience.
resilience, and then you're gonna have to replace it a little quicker. That's
So
all.
it's not a free usage by going on that field, but
No.
maybe it's not $500, maybe there's some number that.
No,
would be a
there's an
reasonable
annual
number.
depreciation cost if you wanna look at it that way.
About 50,000 years. So the
Is-
useful life is about 10 years. So if you figure $500,000, you figure 50,000 a year on the average. is
I mean,
what
and
it's-
that money should go into a fund to, whatever money you do collect for fees should go into a separate fund to keep that field then.
Yeah, I don't know really if that's not how the budget works, though. They use
Well,
the.
I know that, but.
Yeah.
It's a good idea in business, but
It's-
maybe not in the school system.
Yeah, I mean, certainly a
We'll
reserve
lose that to
account.
the state.
Anyway.
A reserve is a good idea.
All right, a couple points. First of all, everything on these grounds needs some type of maintenance. And whatever field, whatever facility it is, there are maintenance that has to be done on an annual basis. So we can track some of that, okay? There's wear and tear. We just heard tonight from Pete about the track issues and other issues in this facility that need to be addressed. Since I've been here, those things have been knocked out of the budget every year, okay? So we have to find a way to replenish those facilities. And if we keep the budget the way it is, then we have to find other income to support that, or else they're going to deteriorate to the point where we're going to be in a hole again, a big one. And we're not going to have the nice facilities that we have. If you look at the Pop Warner on the lower JV field, when they come in here over the winter, they track up and down that field. It's great. I love watching them, all right? But that field is shot. That, every now and then, you need to rotate a field. You need to give it a break. You need to give it a year to regenerate, grow grass, put some fresh soil down. If you don't, you just keep hammering it, and it becomes a nightmare to maintain. The baseball field's the same thing. If you don't take care of them. In the summertime, when we're not active on the fields and groups come up here and play on them, they dig holes, they create problems, they deteriorate the mounds. So there is a lot of maintenance involved around this. And if we keep going the way we're going with the budget, keeping it tight and knocking these things out every year, where are we going to find the money to fix them? So we have a dilemma. Yes, we don't want to charge these individuals to use the facilities, but if we don't find the revenue somewhere, you're not going to have a facility to let them use.
Yeah, but you make a good point, but there's really two issues here. One is for the school to say, on our turf field, okay, it's used 200 times during the school year by school-related athletic events, okay? We'll make a determination, I mean, Nick and the maintenance people, that we believe it's reasonable to say, we'll let it be used another 40 times. I don't know what the number is, 40 times, okay? And those, that's reasonable. It's not going to excessively have wear and tear. So, for the local soccer kids or the lacrosse kids or, the Pop Warner football to play on that, we're saying 40 times. We, the school, have made a decision, our experts, 40 times is reasonable, and it's not going to accelerate or expedite the deterioration. Just like with the baseball field. Our experts, our building and grounds guys say, you know what, we can have another 20 games a year there, So I think you're right. It's not we don't want them to, go over the edge. There's a cost there, absolutely. But within the bounds of setting reasonable parameters. Now, the gym floor is different inside. It's sort of unlimited. But I understand the outside. But to the point that our experts can say we can, and whatever the number is, for the outdoor turf field, 50 times extra year isn't going to materially impact that. The football, the grass, baseball field, 15 extra times. That's setting reasonable, no pun intended, ground rules. I just feel for the people who live in our 4 towns, who are paying taxes, who their kids are, coming into the high school, who are in the high school. They're all, and these are, there's a benefit to our athletic program. It's feeders and they're taxpayers. I don't believe whether it's, I'm not talking about out-of-pocket expense. That I don't believe there should be a $1, 1 nickel charge to use these fields, as our experts, the administration has said, we can set forth 50 times on the turf field, 10 times on the baseball field, or whatever it is, and that's the rule. But they're us. We're not charging ourselves.
It's tough.
Okay. I'm just going to keep the discussion rolling around. Do you want to go down?
Just a real quick one. I think my personal feeling is that the feeder athletic programs ought to be in Group 2. And if there is we talk about out-of-pocket custodial cost, and I'm fully in agreement with you. If we can quantify what the maintenance cost is and allocate it some way, then that should be part of Group 2, and they would pay that. But I don't see them. I don't want to charge them like $500 a pop
think the question-
to use the field for 3 hours.
I think the challenge there, not that it can't be done, is figuring out what that group is. Who are those people? I mean, I can
Maybe we have to
obviously
name
say,
them.
I can obviously say them. Probably, I don't know, maybe there's a way to deal with that. But I'm just saying, I think that's where your issue's going to come up. And plus, then you're going to it's going to change quickly, because then people are going to say, I want to get in that group, and they're going to become part of that group. And so, somehow as a policy level, we have to figure out how to administer that. I hear what you're saying, though. Okay, so I want to go to Pete.
I think we should just delineate which ones we want to put in that group.
Are you talking about Group 3 and Group 4?
No, I'm
No.
talking about
Group 2 and
taking out.
Group 2 and 3.
What he's talking about is taking those that are, quote, in the
feeder
groups and having them essentially pay only the out-of-pocket costs.
Put them in Group 2.
That's what they're saying. So,
Trying to figure out why because Group 3 is the nonprofit, the civic, I guess the group like the soccer group.
right.
And, I mean, on a priority level, you do want to differentiate between just priorities.
I think this isn't so
The
much
use.
priorities. as
No, but
it is
I'm
the
saying you'd
priorities.
still want to differentiate with the priorities, because
Right.
you want to give us the ability to say, well, Warren, Board of Ed, and XYZ nonprofit want to use the field on this day. Who gets it? And you want us to say, well, by policy, Warren Board of Ed gets it.
Yeah,
Forget about the
Structure could
fees.
be different, but you could change the fee structure, but you need that guidance.
Right, that's why I would say, I would
Yeah, that-
differentiate between the two, because you gotta give us the
And-
ability to say, well, so
Also-
we can say who uses it first, but
If
then the fee on group 3, I mean, you wanna look at the
You
wording
have
on that. It
Plus
says-
where applicable.
Yeah, where applicable. So there's discretion there whether we're gonna
Right.
charge a fee at all there. So I don't know if that language is something,
Well, I think there's a sense among some of us, I don't know what, I don't know if there's consensus. I mean, I thought I heard Bernie say, and Laura, I mean, you know, that, you know, the soccer association, lacrosse association, football association, other than out-of-pockets, if they're playing inside, we have a custodian and there's cleaning up, you know, whatever that cost, reasonable, you know, as we calculated, but if they're using if we say there are 50 slots available using the turf field, I don't know, okay? And, the Warren Middle School, the Watchung Middle School, you know, boom, after the 50 slots, it's now down to 35 slots, whatever. They have their field days there, whatever they want, okay? 35, those organizations, you know, we tell them, you have the soccer association, you have 15 slots to use it in the lacrosse, whatever it is, I don't know. And, you know, they're not paying. I don't think there should be any fee associated with the outdoor fields.
We've heard you, okay? Okay. Pete?
A couple of questions for a couple different people. I don't even know, Tim, if you're able to come up with what it costs for maintenance for the fields.
no. it's
Beyond that, even if Tim gave us a figure on all that, and just to pick a number out of the hat, let's say we're going to spend $100,000 maintaining all of our grass fields this year, okay? And there's going to be some amount of use of that's going to be the school. I mean, if we knew that we had out-of-town people coming in 100 times, we'd charge them each, you know, $1,000 a time, and we'd get it all done that way. But we're talking about people in the towns, as Rob points out, and we're talking about our own use. So we'd have a whole discussion here that I don't know that we'd ever resolve as to how we should divide that up. And so, you know, but on the other hand, you know, it's been a number of years since I've been involved with Watchung Hill Soccer, but my recollection is that, you know, that the towns went to them and said, look, you know, we've got a problem. We can't keep maintaining these fields. Watchung Hill Soccer recognized that their use of the fields had a great impact on it. Over the years, they have had fundraisers, and they've been able to contribute. And in the years when I was doing it, back several years ago, you know, we'd get some of us out there, we'd get some donated goods, and we'd try and work the fields on weekends. It's gone beyond that, I understand, with the towns. Unfortunately, we're in a situation where it's now going to become a competition almost between, we need money for our fields too if we got to keep making them available. And as Pete says, they can find the money to pay the township. And Eric's sitting over there saying, we're already paying this, now more people want money from us. So I don't know particularly what the answer is. I think you know, I would like to ask Tim though, you started to talk about the shelf life of the field. If we're going to charge anything to rentals, I would advocate to this group that it be tied in more closely to what it's costing us to have them use it. And if that can't be done, then maybe we make a decision at that point. But I do feel that the $500 per use of the turf fields for our community groups is excessive. And Pete, you mentioned talking about a $5,000 donation from the soccer association. And I was confused. Is that talking about the use of the turf field 10 times? So that's how you come up?
Use of one of the fields for like 20 times, I think is what it was.
In the discussions, that the charge for those fields would amount to about $5,000 for use of the lower soccer field. Or
Oh, not
whatever
the turf field?
Not the turf
Okay.
field.
was applied. And my question, and I have to go back to the people who asked me and say to me, everybody else is charging for use of fields and you're not. This group can donate 200,000 to another organization, but balks at paying and helping to maintain the cost of our facility as a taxpayer, I gotta say to you, Pete, where are your brains? They're giving away 200,000, and you're gonna give away our field and not ask or demand some kind of remuneration for keeping the field playable.
Peter, who they
And
give it, but
wait,
who they
wait,
give the money
Rob,
to?
Rob,
That's the
Rob,
problem.
I got one more
Rob,
question.
we're over here. Peter's talking.
And that is the, one of the things Eric mentioned is that our high school teams are using the Warren turf field.
We
on-
have
on-
some reciprocal agreements with the
Rec
Warren turf
department.
field. We basically say, they used our fields, we use their fields. It's a reciprocal,
Cross team plays there.
occasionally.
They practice there.
There's certain, no, well, again, there's a schedule. There's times that the Warren, various Warren groups use our field. So it's just like, it's a quid pro quo. We just.
It's
we
the
just-
rec department,
yeah,
right? Correct.
No, I'm saying. No, I'm saying, Mr. Harvard, that when we make an arrangement with Warren, they've made an arrangement with us to use our field. So there is, not necessarily your group, other groups.
What I'm going to suggest to all of us is that before we go ahead and adopt a policy that says yes or no, that maybe what we need to do is sit down and talk with the soccer association. I think Pete raises some valid points, and maybe there is some way to get something that's a contribution towards our fields. We're going to use it. I think the sense of everybody here is that, we don't want it to become prohibitive. And some of us would like it to be totally free, but I think maybe we should have a discussion as to, is there something affordable that they can live with before we adopt something without the input with, Eric just haven't been lucky to have seen this on our agenda.
Well, we had already talked about the need. Remember, this is the first reading. So remember, first reading doesn't mean it's policy, it just means it's on the table for further discussion. That's all that means. And we had already talked about the need to reach out to those groups, at least establish a communication plan with them so they would be aware of it and so that we could phase things in over a period of time that would be acceptable to them also, just be aware of that. Okay?
And just in terms of the way this is drafted, Group 1, clubs recognized by the Board of Education as the last one, we could recognize the Watch on Hill Soccer Association, and that moves them up into Group 1 with no
If we so
contribution.
chose.
If we so chose, yes.
If you have, I think we've, Bernie,
Just one real quick one. Pete, I want to just address the use of the field for 3 hours. We have a proposed $200 fee. If you can imagine taking 10 kids over here for a soccer practice to one of our lower fields, and those 10 kids were saying, just, you can come here, but your parents got to give you a $20 bill for each 10 of you to use this field as a practice field. 9-year-old kids who weigh all of 70 or 80 pounds, you're going to ask for a $20 bill from every one of them twice a week when they come someplace to practice. It's just much too much.
So let's just,
Wait,
I think we've gotten the message on this policy the way it is. If you have any new points,
You have a new point.
all right.
Okay, I
Better be
mean,
new.
no, it's brand new. I mean, I see kids.
Just thought of it.
I see, well,
Go ahead, Rob, I'm sorry. Go on.
That's okay. I'm not saying it first. I see kids playing tennis. Do you want to charge them to play on the tennis court? They're kids who after school
Should we address that?
who ride their bicycles here and they're throwing a ball around. We're gonna say $5 each a head. I mean,
No,
you know,
they're actually excluded
Actually,
by
that's
the
in here.
policy. If you get into by the policy. you
Well, how
find
about the
that
tennis
kind-
courts?
That's in here.
It's in there also.
so when people just sort of
if a
show
kid-
up.
So if a kid shows up and wants to run the track, walk on the track, run across the turf field, play on the turf field, come up and play tennis with their friend up there, that's all recognized as a policy, it's not a cost.
Right.
The thing that we're trying to focus this on is
Organized
groups organized, where they come up, they want to use the fields.
But I understand you could, but Paul, you could take that argument and say, organize people from the town who represent large chunks of residents who are taxpayers. Those are the very people. On the one hand, we're saying, gee, we have our high school budget. The kid, their kids in the soccer association, their parents say, we're asking the folks over here at the high school. They're asking us to pass their budget, but you know what? They're asking us to. They're charging us $5,000 to play. So, I mean, you can look at the consequences in saying this is a facility, a community-based facility that provides services for kids and their families, from the 4 towns, that is, we want many people to use it, subject to, reasonable maintenance, usage from the high school sports teams, from rotating fields. You don't want them, getting burned out and all those things. But at the end of the day, what is this high school? And you're asking all sorts of people in this community to support our budget, so then I say we have to support their activities as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on the policy
Yeah.
at this time?
I got one other thing down further on. Use of fields or tennis courts by groups or individuals who charge a fee to their participants or users must complete the facility use form and pay according to the established fee structure. How do we enforce that? The biggest issue here is the tennis courts.
Yeah.
How are we
question.
gonna enforce that, and what kind of signage are we gonna put up there?
I think we are
That's-
developing
Putting
signs
signs
for it.
Okay.
How to enforce it?
They may have to
We're
get the
gonna-
nets from someone.
We're gonna have to have some spies.
Well, that's what I mean, we should have some
We
kind of.
talked about that.
Okay.
It's not to say that
You're
we
on it.
have the answer to it.
You're on it,
but
you're on
there's
it.
a
You're
question
just,
how you do
okay,
it.
that's all, that's the only
That's
point I
obviously an
wanted to
issue.
bring up.
Can I also ask a question?
Go ahead.
Parking lots. I'm just confused as to.
There are
if-
people that come and rent the entire parking lot.
Okay, but does this mean that if you're coming and using our field, we're going to charge you for the field and the parking lot?
No.
This is for drivers.
Okay, because it's not all that clear. The other, if we.
Could
are
put a
we-
toll booth there, maybe, Peter.
Are we also in the performing arts? Use the tolls?
We can talk about that, that's part of it.
Okay.
That's a big part of this.
Is the idea that they will pay a security deposit of 50% and then pay the full rental amount and then get back their security deposit afterwards?
No, the security deposit goes toward the rent. So in other words, if it's a total rental fee of $4,000, they pay $2,000, they have a balance of $2,000.
They don't
Okay,
get anything back.
well-
It's 4,000.
But I'm questioning whether or not there should be a security deposit, maybe of not 50%, but of some amount, that would make it easier for us if there are damages to deduct it against. Because we do talk in this policy about deducting damages and not giving them back money on their security deposit.
Yeah,
Well, that's a good point.
it is a good point.
You could charge a percentage of the total cost
Even if it's.
That's,
to cover,
Again,
you know.
The purpose of this is not to say that this is the final policy. We're just adopting this as a
Right.
first read tonight, so we get it on the
Yeah,
table.
yep.
If there are major changes to this policy, which it sounds like they're probably going to be, it's going to go back, and have to be brought back to you for first reading anyway. All right, so just be aware of that. We're just trying to get it to the point where we can get more discussion on this thing going forward. The other thing I'll tell you we have to do is we have to provide the administration with some methodology to prioritize the use of the fields, which we don't have in place right now. And we also have to have some methodology to make sure that we do get compensated for certain uses of the fields that we're not getting any compensation for right now, or not as much as, or not in a fair amount, or not a consistent amount. We've been criticized in the past for having inconsistent policies, for having inconsistent methodologies in place. And this is an effort to try to put in place something that's going to allow some consistency and give our administrative staff here some kind of guidance that this board wants to try to provide to them. And so I'll just encourage us to, this is the first read, we're just going to get it on the book, then we can start talking about it again, and we'll go through some more changes. Let me get the over here.
In terms of the process, when do you actually sit down with the various groups and go through either signing an agreement or coming up with something? I mean, what's the timing that you need to have really this thing completed by? I mean, I'm not gonna say as soon as possible, but I know in Greenbrook, there are certain times when groups come in looking to, lock up the field or sign
It's
an agreement.
ongoing, we have it all the time.
It's ongoing,
It's
Jerry.
ongoing, so there's really
There's
no
lots of
Yeah.
people that
sense
come up.
of
I mean,
this has to be done by a certain point
No,
in order
but-
to cover this group or that
Last
group.
week.
No, but I think, well, in terms of CUSAC, we'd probably like to have the policy in place. And certainly, I'll feel a lot more comfortable, as will the athletic director, the building and grounds department, knowing that what we're doing is we're following board policy. Because right now, we don't have a policy, and we're renting out the facility, the theater, these type of things, and like I always say, the first thing, when people ask me a question, what's the policy say? That's the first thing I always say. And then I look to code or whatever. But, the policy gives us your guidance as to how you want us to treat, these groups when they come in. What priorities do they have? What's the cost? So it kind of makes it easier for me when they come in and they're looking for things, and they ask, but why is it this much, or why can't I use it on this Sunday? Well, because the board voted to approve this policy.
Because there's
So
two
I
ways
need
of
that.
doing it. One is to have it approved for first reading, and the other way is to pull it back and not have it, on the
Right.
table for first reading. And one puts you back in the schedule a little bit further by having a first reading.
At
So
this
I'm
time,
just
it's the
trying to
same
get a
thing.
feel for which is
It doesn't matter, because at this time, we're in the same boat, because this is gonna have to go through some changes. I'm not quite sure how we're gonna write some of the changes into it. And that's probably gonna put it back to first reading. Lou?
We already, real quick, we already talked about getting all the different groups in to talk about this. Well, I think we should do that, but also put it at them and say, here's our facility, we're keeping the budget low, what can we do as a group, all the groups and us, to make it work, period? And come up with some kind of plan to formulate that we can keep the facility going and they can keep using it and everybody's happy. I know it doesn't always work that way, but maybe we can come to a middle of the road at least.
We'll see.
How we doing, all right?
I knew this was gonna be a long discussion on this topic. This has been discussed a lot in the policy committee, and so, given that we weren't able to come necessarily to a consensus agreement, I had a feeling it was gonna become a lightning rod in this organization also, as it got into broader. But please remember, we need to be able to put something in place that's gonna provide some guidance, and so a lot of this is gonna be a give and take at this point in time. This one is one of the hardest ones that we'll work on over the next couple of months. So, Bernie, your closing comments for this
Yeah, I would like to
discussion?
just recommend that the committee not only think of priorities, but thinking about a bumping policy as well. For instance, if a 2 comes in and says, I need to use it when a group 4 already has the date, that's kind of an issue. And somebody else made a point, I'll reiterate, that you really can't do group 2. You got to do it 2A, 2B, 2C. You need to know the priority among those things in group 2.
Yeah, there's another level in there that has to be there. You want to write those and send me an
I
email
think
on that?
that's- I will.
Could you do
I
that?
think we do talk about that idea of bumping.
The bumping we talked about,
Here.
how that was going to be managed. And it becomes, at least you know what the priorities are, who comes first, second, third, fourth, but the actual decision on that is going to be
The school,
done.
the students always come first.
But the discussion, that would be through the administrative
I'll
staff.
send you some notes
Yeah.
tomorrow.
With that, let me just close the discussion on that. Let's move on to the second policy, which is, I'll point out to you, I think this is the 4th time. We went from a general policy, first read, I forget the exact details of this, but anyway, we went through a general policy, then we went to a more detailed policy, and now we're back to a more general policy. So this is a first read on the inappropriate staff conduct. Does anybody have any comments on this? It's basically what we saw in August. A lot of the detail has been removed from it that was there before. It leaves a lot of discretion
Less
up
is
to
more.
the,
Less is more.
yeah, leaves a lot of discretion up to the administrative staff here.
Less is
And
more.
the New Jersey School Board of Education, as well as the Commissioner of Education, because they're the ones who ultimately make decisions on what's considered appropriate and inappropriate behavior. Okay? With no other, if you have any discussion on that, great. That's gonna go into first reading tonight. And then the next two are job descriptions and the employment of the chief school administrator.
Mr. President, I'd like to make one recommendation in the 1400 job description on the second line, I should say third line, down, superintendent shall recommend for approval and disseminate to the board job descriptions for all other employment positions created by the board.
Okay. So when we go through the first reading on
I have a
Pete,
additional comment
I'm sorry, go ahead.
in regards to our conversation. I would ask that there be clarification of the recommendation for approval. And my point is the original presentation read, superintendent will prepare,
Approve and disseminate.
whatever it is, shall prepare, approve, and disseminate. And we discussed the removal of the word approve
Yeah.
for whatever reasons. It takes away the final authority of the board to implement job descriptions.
Let me make one clarifying statement to that, Peter, before you go forward. I think we're all on the same page.
Right.
If I
Okay.
just-
So,
When it said in the policy that I shall prepare, approve, that means, let's say Dr. DeGancy writes a particular job description for one of his staff. I approve that
Right.
before I submit it to the board for approval.
okay, but anything that is not approved by the superintendent, not you, but the superintendent, if it's not approved, this, as it reads, the board cannot approve.
But I'm saying, I think
That's-
there was a nuance to the
I
language
hear
that I'm
you,
trying to clarify.
But I want to make my point. So and I understand what you're saying. My recommendation, as we had talked, would be a little different, only to, again, give the board and make sure that the board has final say. And if we include, as was suggested and we talked about, recommend for approval.
Right.
That means, as I read that, it's the same as approval, the word approval. Because if it's not recommended, as I read this, by the superintendent, then the board cannot act by policy. That is, in essence, the same meaning. The superintendent will recommend for approval. If the superintendent didn't recommend it, then we can't really do it if you take it to the letter of the word.
Yeah, but
So,
you
just-
don't get
so,
a
wait.
job description to review unless I recommend it to you. for
Right,
review.
so if it's never recommended,
Right.
then we can't act on it. So my point is to keep this, for the board to keep final authority, it should read something like this, and the lawyers and the wordsmith people would understand, could put whatever wording they wanted in there. The superintendent shall prepare and be asked to provide input for the development of job descriptions, which means that we can accept the input or we don't accept the input, and the board still has the authority to implement whatever it sees fit or deems necessary, regardless of an employee dictating by approval or recommending. Because if either of those two are there, that person, the superintendent, has control of what the board does. But if we put in, shall prepare and be asked to provide input, we can ask you to provide input, we don't accept it. And it's still, the board still has the authority to pass whatever it sees fit and deems necessary, regardless of whether it's approved or recommended for approval. That's my point.
Okay, any other, we're on, Rob, since you came back, we're on job descriptions.
I guess the question is, does
1400.
the board have to approve job descriptions, or does it not have to approve job descriptions?
According to policy, superintendent, business administrator, board secretary, supervisory
Yes.
Well, I
position.
see those, but I'm saying for other types of job descriptions, is it whose responsibility
what
is it all
else-
to have
Yeah.
actual approval of it?
Most
But
of-
do you have to come to us and say, I have this new job description, and you can do it as a courtesy, or is it a requirement?
In the current policy, which this is a replica of the current policy, except for the statute changes, which
The governors are the owners of the company. You don't have a say into what your employee does? That's ridiculous. in my opinion. It's
So
ridiculous.
the point here is, the point here is that do we have the right governance structure with regard to the way this policy is currently worded, where we say the superintendent shall prepare, approve, and disseminate to the board and on the positions. Does the superintendent have the authority to approve the job descriptions as they get developed in the school, or simply recommend them for approval to the board? We can vote no on them, or we can vote yes on them, or any other alternative which Peter's recommended. So we can take this back to the table. We can vote on it, get it onto the first read, and then we can take it back and reword it if it goes through major changes. If there are major wording changes to it, like it sounds like that second sentence is gonna get hammered, changed around, it will come back to the board again for first reading. That's the way this process works.
we would change it.
I don't know either right now. Bernie,
I think some
I'm
of
looking at
these-
you because I knew you were raising your hand.
Yeah, some of the, like a new job function usually comes to the board, we discuss it, we check
goes
the
to
salary. So I think we do have to have some control over that, Pete.
It goes through committee. That's the first place it goes.
Yeah, but I just think that, I'm thinking more about the new ones.
There's really nothing here that changes anything that existed in the past.
Well, then I think Pete's wording has to be, worked on, and maybe
So we will,
the committee can do that.
We have,
We'll bring that one back.
huh?
Going to bring that one back to the committee.
We're undoubtedly gonna bring that one back.
Yeah.
Well,
We
what
can
is,
bring
what
back,
is the sense of the board, though, as far as whether or not?
I'm trying to get that right now.
Yeah, I'm just, before you rewrite it, it's a sense of everybody that the board should approve job descriptions, or the CSA should approve and then recommend to the board. And that's the question before you rewrite the policy that you have to answer, because we're gonna vote on it.
We're not
Well, the only way it would end up here is if she recommended it, so.
Exactly. Which is how it is under code. Just the
Is
same
it
way
code?
just the same way as if I'm bringing you a list of teachers to hire for the coming school year.
That's by
Disseminate, though, it
code.
doesn't say
And
recommend.
we,
This is as well.
but
This is
if
as
it's,
well, Peter.
I don't know, we talked about that.
Yeah, and I
This is
explained to
by
you that.
code, that the Board of Education is relieved of its powers or powers to create a job description regardless of who, whether it wants it or not, because it's approved or not approved by one of the employees. And that's my point.
But Peter,
Let's separate two things here. You said, I want to make sure I understand. You're saying create the job description. Are you saying you think the Board of Education should write the job description?
No.
Or
No.
should have it written and then approve it?
Have it written by whomever. The superintendent can write it
And then-
and say, fine. But if the board doesn't agree with it, or what has been written, or disagrees with what has been written, it can say, we want these things included.
So that then puts the writing responsibility back on the board.
No,
You could say.
We
the
delegate the
superintendent's-
responsibility for first draft to the superintendent, but the board then has final authority on the actual writing of the job
Absolutely.
description. That's what I'm saying, the
Absolutely.
responsibility for the writing becomes the board.
absolutely. We can delegate that responsibility, but we retain the authority to either accept it, reject it, and if we reject the superintendent's recommendation,
Is it
then we
just-
could say, we want this included. And if the board superintendent says, I don't want to include it, well, we include it
I
anyway.
think what Pete is saying is the superintendent shall recommend for board approval
No, that's not what he's saying.
job description.
That's not what he's saying.
That's not what he's saying.
That's why I went through that little discussion. What he's saying is now, here's the way this works. Superintendent makes a recommendation on a job description. The board says, I don't like that job description, and says, I want it changed to add A, B, C, and D. And then those things would be added in there, and then it would come back to the board for discussion. and for
We get to a standoff, then the superintendent says, no, I'm not going to put those in there. Then where are we? We can't create the job.
So that's the point, so the point I was making is the board takes on the responsibility for the authorship and the writing of the job descriptions. We delegate the aspects of that to the superintendent. That's what we're talking about doing.
Yes.
Pete. Go ahead, Pete.
We're trying to mold the two together. I understand Jerry's point that we are still asking the superintendent to recommend a job description. And I think, I think we're basically there with this language if instead of disseminate, shall prepare, approve, and ask the board to approve the job description.
that's basically what I said.
Yeah, it was the first one.
Well, I
Those
think
words
it-
are
But I
better.
think that's
That's what
different
I
from
said.
disseminate.
No, but Peter's words are better.
Shall recommend for approval
Yeah.
and disseminate.
It's different, no, it's not the same. The difference is who gets the final say on making changes to the job description. And
Why
what
can't you
Peter's
just say
saying-
that?
what Peter is saying.
And the
he
board
wants to
will have
the right to
final say on
Just
that?
let me finish. What Peter's saying is he wants to have the right as the board, given that we're presumably the last word here in this district, to say, we want this included in the job description, and we want it in there. And we would then go ahead and approve it. The way, if you just say approve and then the board approves, that doesn't suggest that the board has any input into that process.
You're right, well, I think it suggests that they do have input, but what it does leave you open to is a stalemate. Where if
That's
the,
That's my
precisely the
point. There is no stalemate when you are the board of directors. You direct, you approve. You can take recommendations, you can ask for recommendations, but the group, whoever is doing the job for you, cannot put you at a stalemate. That's my point.
Well, the only, just a word of
That's not what
caution
this
to the
says.
board
is
on
there a
this one.
code
That's not what it
problem?
says.
Well, so we have New Jersey CUSAC, which I don't know if we're going to be able to go through tonight.
No, I don't think we are. I don't think we're getting
There's
there.
issues on governance, and I think that's what you have to pay
This is
attention
where
to
you-
here. Because if the board is writing job descriptions, I'd have to question the governance
That's-
issue.
that's
We,
out-
we,
out of
we
line.
write them whether we like it or not, because
No, no, no.
we approve them.
No.
And to
You
go
don't write
forward,
them.
to have some roadblock in the way that says we cannot do it, that's one thing. And we go back to the hiring of the personnel. That's by statute. But there is a way around that. There is a way around it. In this case, as I read this, there is no way around it. We're at a stalemate. And you, not you, but the superintendent can block what the board wants to do.
What is can I get some other input into this policy at this time? Anybody else have any thoughts on
I think
this?
you're afraid.
I agree with both Peters.
Well, then you have two divergent opinions.
Okay.
Yeah, they
Nice move,
They don't
Bernie.
agree.
I like the strategy. Any other comments on this policy? All right.
Well, I just have
think you gotta
the
regrab
question, and maybe I missed it when I stepped out of the room, is I don't know whether or not there's a code
Code.
requirement
Well, that's-
that says that job descriptions other than these two have to be written by the
We will
CSA.
bring this back with copies
the
of
codes down
of the
here.
code statutes too
Yeah,
for you.
we
okay?
should, we should,
We will bring these
We
back
should
so
print
everybody can
these
see
out.
what's the
We'll print them
code,
out,
and so
see
then
what-
then we can all see it, all
I
right?
can only say the model that we've used already, where
It's
she's brought
exactly-
things to us, whether it's directive of operations,
For your approval.
for approval, and then we suggested, it needs to be more
Yes.
focused on 24-hour or whatever job. I mean,
That was
we had input
incorporated.
into that process, and that's the right model,
That's
and how we
exactly
actually
right.
capture
And that's
that.
what it says here.
Well, that's the right model, but that's not what this says.
That's not what it
No.
says here.
Each
That is-
That's not what it
supervisory
says.
position.
no.
That's not what
That's
this
why-
says.
Yeah,
right.
the-
This is-
the
this is not
difference is
written-
non-supervisory right now, as though this is written. Wouldn't even come to the board.
No, it says, Peter, it says for each supervisory position, director of operations is a supervisory position.
I see, you're in the
Yeah,
first
well,
sentence.
we followed the policy on that.
Thank
You're
you.
right about the second
The
one.
difference
Thank you, Fran.
between that and what Peter's talking about is the non-supervisory.
We're going to hear from somebody that hasn't spoken yet on this topic.
Actually, I was out talking to Eric on the inappropriate staff conduct. If you go back, no, I was out for that, but I think there's a typo.
I'll go back to that, I just wanted to
Wanna go
get
back?
to that.
Okay, I don't
I'll
know
get
what to
back
say.
to
I
that.
just, when you're ready,
I want to finish this one first.
No, I thought you were finished.
I at least wanted to declare victory on one.
No, declare victory on that one, if you want.
Bernie,
Fran,
closing comments?
could you bring a, could you bring a list of how many what the job descriptions are for us next time?
Yeah,
we will-
let me also mention, as board members, you approve the contract of all of the various groups that are employed here. Those contracts list the parameters of the job. So you are not, there's no way, I know you have this mindset that it can be roadblocked or you can be taken off point as to what you might want to accomplish, but that's impossible. It's logistically impossible.
But I've never seen one of those contracts. I mean, I approved the hiring of these people, but we don't see the contract.
No, the contracts, the bargaining unit.
Say
contract.
bargaining unit specifies.
I'm talking about the bargaining unit contract. You hire teachers who teach 5 periods, and, the parameters of their description, the job description, is spelled out in the contract.
I don't
We
think
don't have
to the
separate
extent.
job descriptions?
It's
than-
not-
than the
there's no job
collective
description in the
bargaining agreement?
contract.
Because there's none in
No,
there.
no, the conditions, terms and conditions of employment
agree on that,
are
yes.
in the
Yes,
contract.
I agree on that.
That is not different than
let's
what
declare
the teacher
victory.
does daily.
Okay, any further?
We're going to take this, I'm sorry, we're going to take this around for some more discussion.
too late
We'll take
for
another swalk at it. It's getting a little late here. Rob, you had a typo on inappropriate.
Well, two
Can
things,
you
yeah.
show
if
it
you
to me
turn-
later?
No, I just, can you, it's the first page,
I'm with you. Where?
last paragraph, starting with school personnel.
Yeah.
Third sentence, report alleges conduct by, it should be, I believe, conduct to the principal, the building principal, correct, Peter?
Which paragraph?
I suspect you're right.
Yeah, the last paragraph, starting with school personnel. The third sentence where it starts, the report
In the event
alleges
of report-
conduct
inter-
to,
Yeah, in the event the report alleges conduct.
it says by, but it should say
No,
to.
maybe.
No, it should be by.
Maybe by. That is.
They're the person
But-
doing it.
But except that shouldn't be reported to the building principal.
That's what I'm saying.
That doesn't belong in that
It should be,
sentence.
I thought it would read, it would sound correct, in the event the report alleges conduct to the building principal or media supervisor, the school staff member, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, may directly report to the building principal. I got it.
I think, the only other,
We'll
the
take a
only,
look
the-
at that.
Paul, the only other, and Pete, the only, because you're good at this stuff too, the only other comment that I would make with that paragraph, and then the one where it says reports, why does it say, there are 3 or 4 of them, it keeps saying may report, should it not say will? Should may be, I mean, may suggests that it's discretionary whether they report these things as compared to
Shall.
will report.
Shall.
Well, or it's saying you need to report it, not giving you the option of reporting it. The way it reads now, if you look at that, and then you see the paragraph where it says, the last paragraph starting with reports, reports may be in writing or with verbal notification. It seems to me, it's reports will be in writing or with verbal notification. And then the final one, there are 2 mays. The Director of Curriculum and Instruction, upon receiving the initial report of superintendent, upon reviewing the building principal's investigation, may take such appropriate, it seems to me,
Where
will
are you,
take
Rob?
such
Rob,
appropriate
where are you?
action.
I'm sorry, where are you?
Last paragraph.
The last paragraph, right?
The may
Lou?
allows
Yep.
discretion.
The last paragraph, the 3 mays should be either changed to shall or will.
No, Rob, you got to read them a little
Yeah,
more
that's-
carefully, because in some of these situations, like the first sentence in there, if some teacher comes and tells us she saw something that was inappropriate, we don't, if we
don't
make
want
this
it.
shall be in writing, we can't do anything until she puts it in writing. So if she gives it to us verbally, that's enough
No,
for
but,
us
no, no,
to
but
start
it
the
will,
process.
no, but it's will be in writing or verbal notification. It's one or the other.
No, no.
If you,
Rob,
the way
she-
I read it,
she
she
may
may
not-
do it in writing, or she may do verbal notification.
correct. That's
but-
what you want.
No, but it doesn't say that she has to do either. That's the way I read that, Fran.
All right, we'll look
Which
at it
I
again.
understand what you're saying.
That's all.
It's one or the other.
No,
It's
I
gotta be
understand. If
one of
that's the intent, one or the other, she may be
That's the
writing or she may
intent.
be verbal. It doesn't mean she has to do either one.
Well,
Gotcha.
how about we say may
But it can't be
either be
reported.
made in writing?
Okay.
We'll work it.
I
That's
hear
my
what you're
point.
saying.
And
We'll go
the
through that
last
again.
sentence where it says, the report may include,
But not limited to?
I would just look at the mays, whether it should be shall or will. That was my
Okay.
point about
We'll
that.
check the maze.
I guess the question is, has this gone through like a, Nick?
This is from.
This is
Before we
almost
wire
directly
this
from
down
Dr.
for a lot.
Nacastro.
This is directly from legal.
Okay.
So the wills and shalls have already gone through a.
Speaking of will, maybe when you have the head of our English department look at it.
All right, with that, the last policy is the employment of the CSA. The changes in there are as indicated in change control. You can read them. It's going into first read. These are being put in place to, as I understand this, to bring these in line with the statute. Okay? So with that, I'm going to close the discussion on policy, seeing that it's 9:30 and we have another discussion going. I'm going to defer the NJ Cusack discussion. Can you do a brief thing on the CSA
Yeah, I
evaluation?
think we're already, we started this process a little bit late in terms of CSA evaluations, and we're already a little behind the schedule that we've outlined. So what we've given you tonight is a hard copy of the form that we intend to use for the CSA evaluation. Fran's going to be completing her part 1, which deals with goals, and that's her responsibility. Ours is this responsibility to complete this. And again, it's in requirement of CUSAC that we do a CSA evaluation annually. We need to complete this. and we need it back fairly quickly because the timetable, as Paul's outlined, is that this thing has to be wrapped up and finalized by April's election, pretty much. So it gives us a little more than a month to get all this input, get it all collected, and then summarized, and have a meeting with the CSA. All these things are required by statute. So we need input, and we need it fairly quickly. As I've tried to indicate in the past, this needs to focus on things that have occurred this year, this school year. Nothing previous is relevant to this year's evaluation, and you really should provide comments and examples if you choose to indicate something that's either exceptional behavior or lacking, in terms of performance. Please try to provide specific examples. And the goal is that this is collected and summarized into one document that's provided to the CSA. The way we've tried to do this, or intend to do this, is have the Personnel Committee collect all these things and summarize them together and provide the summary document for the board to then look at in executive session. So
How do you want to collect them?
that's the question. I mean, do people want these electronically to be able to fill out? Is that
Yes.
the easiest?
Okay.
So we can send them out electronically. How quickly can we get them back? That's the key here.
I don't think that's a question. I think we have to have them back in 2 weeks. So the next board meeting is the 25th.
I'd like them a
This
little
is the-
before, so maybe we could even have a summary document, if we could do a week and a half. Would that be doable?
So you could do
A
that.
week and a half from today?
Yeah.
I can't, but,
You can't?
no, I've got negotiations, I've got,
Can you do it in 2 weeks?
yes, 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
All right.
14 days.
But sooner, if we can get it back sooner, rather than waiting till the end, that would be really appreciated.
Where do they go back to, Jerry? The electronic ones?
When we send out the email, we'll tell you how to get them back to us. I think what it's going to be is a copy to both to Jerry and to me.
Okay.
Okay?
So 2
Everybody hear that?
weeks.
Hard
So we need it
copy.
in 2 weeks.
Guys, gotta have them
Now,
done.
if you want to do it on hard copy, that's fine
It's
too.
in your blue folder.
Pardon?
It's in the
You've
blue
got a
folder.
hard copy in your
Yeah, you
folder
have-
if
you
you
have a
prefer to do
copy
it that
here.
way.
This is the standard New Jersey School Board Association form. Okay, we're just using the same form. This is very similar to the one that was passed out earlier, so we could provide casual feedback to Dr. Stromsley.
Bless you.
She's going to fill out one that speaks specifically to goals and objectives and performance against those. The ones that, remember the CSA goals that we had developed earlier, that she had developed earlier this year and that we had agreed to, so.
And it's the final thing, this is a majority opinion that's gonna be expressed in terms of the summary document, so it's important we have as much input as possible to really reflect the majority's opinion as far as performance goes.
Okay. Any questions on that? So we're talking about 2 weeks. When we send out the email, which should go out tomorrow, then we need to, in there, we'll put the time frame as well as how to get it back to us, okay? All right. With that, we can move on. All right, we're in the A's. Does anybody have any of the A's? There's only 2 of them. If they want to pull, A1 or
What do you
A2,
wanna do with
separate
A1?
discussion. For A1,
You're pulling,
for A1, I'm going to suggest, pardon?
Separate some of these.
I'm going to suggest that we pull 7510 and 1400.
I didn't get a real answer.
Yeah, and 1400. Let's just pull them out. We're not even going to take them in the first reading. So all we're going to take in the first reading is the inappropriate staff conduct. We'll look at the wording, Rob, that you had suggested about the mays, the wills, the shells, whatever.
So you're amending it?
And amending it. Those are minor. I consider those to be minor. We'll point them out.
Right,
against
not
you.
substantive.
Might not
Well,
amend
it could be,
We
but
may
right.
amend it.
Yeah, and then the other one is the employment of the CSA. So 3281 and 1220 then are going to go in for first reading. Okay? Can I get a motion on those? On A1s and A2s, if nobody wants to
I
pull?
want to pull A2.
You want to pull A2?
So I'll move A1
A1 as, can I get a
as
second?
amended with,
Thank you.
I'll second that.
We have a second. Any further discussion on policies? Okay, can I get a hand vote on this? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Jerry, move A2.
The motion carries.
Move A2.
I'd like to move A2, please.
Can I get a second on A2?
Second.
All right, Pete, you had a discussion?
Yeah, my,
Suggest that A2 needs to be amended because we have only one student
that was
wrestler.
my question. Why we were sent at that
We're
many
not
people with
approving
one
4, we
student?
approved 1.
Okay, so do the people that made and seconded it agree with the change it from 4 to 1?
Which students are?
One student.
Brendan Orr.
So how many chaperones we sent in?
Well,
That would be the coach. Dan
Which
Smith.
coach?
Dan Smith.
So it's
head
only
coach.
one coach then?
Why is only one coach? What makes you say that?
Well, I just would
Well,
assume
it
that.
listed 3 here.
I understand.
One
but-
student going.
Hold on.
Oh,
One
can I-
person talk.
Can I interject, Paul?
Go ahead.
To
Go
help?
ahead.
I have to ask Tom on this one. If he can provide some guidance, because he's more closely aligned with this situation than the rest of us.
We asked for 3 rooms, 1 room for all the coaches, 1 room, 2 rooms for the 4 wrestlers, we were hoping. Okay, we weren't bringing anybody else. 3 out of the 4 did not make it, okay? So I think that's what
Right,
Dr.
so
Stromslin is relating to at that point.
So are we
So
now?
why 3 coaches versus
Because
Tom?
Go ahead.
That was the
Because all
question.
3
I think that was-
coaches
Yeah, that's what we
are
asked.
involved with the coaching of the kid. We weren't paying for extra room, 3 of the coaches were gonna stay in 1 room.
I see.
But we can only pay for the kids.
But,
No.
no, oh, sorry.
No,
Pay for the kids.
no, we can pay for both.
Coaches? Okay.
Yeah.
So now are we going to, is the amendment that
Fact-
we're going to pay for 2 rooms? Is
Matter
that
of fact-
roughly 2/3 of the 704?
Matter of fact, we had also, I think it's it's 2 resolutions, really.
Okay.
It's tied in with
D5.
D5?
D5. We're paying, the one coach was putting on his credit card the entire cost of the rooms for all the coaches.
Where's it?
So that's part 2 of that.
Okay, but my question, Tim, was, does that mean we're spending roughly 2/3 of the 704 rather than the 704? Are we getting 2 rooms instead of 3?
Can't you just put, instead of
We're
the
getting
exact
3
amount,
rooms,
can you just put a
correct?
not to
Not getting
exceed?
2.
No, I think we need to have it more close.
We
You
have
can't just
one-
put not to exceed $1,000?
No.
Not
We have
anymore.
1 student and 3 coaches in 1 room, so
2
that's 2
rooms.
rooms.
2 rooms.
It's going to be 2 rooms, so that's 2/3. Before
Is
it was
that
gonna
correct,
be-
Tom?
It was going to be 3 rooms.
Whatever, yeah.
Is it 2 rooms?
It's 2 rooms. Before it was going to be 3 rooms.
You're asking
So
3
you're,
coaches, you're
then,
asking,
to answer Peter's question, he's correct then. It would be,
Okay.
you would take out 1 room cost, so one of the lodging, like the mileage would be the same.
Right. Okay, roughly.
Just roughly 2/3 of that.
Okay.
So you can figure out the
Let's
numbers
figure
and
it
put
out.
them in, and we'll make it, and it'll be 2/3 of the cost of the 704.
And all 3 of our coaches
It's
will go.
384 in there, in the lodging then.
Okay.
So what's it reading out, Tim? The total cost is what?
The total cost is... $512.
Okay, as amended, do you guys agree with that?
No problem.
And that changes D5 as well. The travel reimbursement report goes from 704 to 512.
What is 512?
$512
Is the
Based on
revised.
is
what?
the
room
revised
plus mileage.
room
and
cost
meals.
and mileage.
Oh, you have it broken down, so you know, well,
Right.
okay.
Right.
So it's
No
2
meals, they're not going to eat?
We have $10 in there for meals and incidentals. I think that they were going
Starving him so he makes weight.
to...
Coach is not the main way.
Well, I guess they're not eating much.
Yeah, I think not.
$10 for what?
I don't think I think they were going to pay for their own meals. It's my understanding.
I mean, if that's by choice, fine.
That was by
But-
choice, my understanding. We went round and round with this one.
Move on.
All right, I'll,
So it's 512
Okay,
total.
with
All right.
512.
Any other discussion on A2? It's been amended, so it's now 1 student, and it's a total cost of $512.
Would you say the
Can I
total
get a
cost,
vote?
would you say the total cost should not exceed?
We have
You
to
don't know what the
prove-
cost is,
We
do
have to
you?
prove the exact
No,
amount
you gotta...
to be
this is-
reimbursed.
Yeah, you have to approve the cost, and they can't exceed that.
Do we have
Okay.
to do it before?
Yes.
Yes,
Unfortunately.
No travel.
you need
remember
prior
A5?
board approval.
It's a new regulation on that, right?
Yes.
New law, right?
But
That's
if
why.
we approve a higher amount and it's less, what's the
They have to
problem?
approve the amount that they're going to spend.
But if they don't?
Oh, if they don't spend that much money, then we only reimburse them for what they've.
Right.
Yeah,
So
that's correct.
why are we, say, not...
That's wrong.
There's a new law
It's more
that makes it
complicated.
worded that way.
So if we put a figure in there that they're not gonna exceed, and you tell them, hey, don't go over this, but we put in enough to cover the unexpected, so that,
In good faith, we're supposed to put down what we anticipate the cost will be.
This is a process, Pete. It's not that simple.
It's just,
They've been given all the room charges throughout the country. They have to provide, teachers, coaches, have to provide the cost of the room, meals and incidentals, and the mileage.
okay.
It's their responsibility. That's what they've given us.
So we have that, the motions in front of us, one
Taking one
student,
card down there?
$512, what?
You're taking one car down there now? Like the
Yes.
That's what they're
50
doing.
cents a
Who
month.
cares?
Can we,
Mileage may be less.
Who cares?
can we get a roll call vote on this?
Yes.
Can we get a roll call vote on this, please?
Maybe he's jogging down there.
That's a good suggestion, actually.
Still gets the mileage.
You take the train. Can we get a roll call
Two
vote?
cars there.
Tim,
I'm sorry?
can we get a vote?
I'm sorry.
Buddy.
I'm lost.
You were
He's
still
having too
calculating
much
Mr.
room
Bi-
cost.
I was, yes. Mr. Binder?
Yes.
Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Mr. Falzarano?
Yep.
Mr. Horowitz?
Yes.
Mrs. Mandel?
Yes.
Pepe?
Yep.
Mr. Sun?
Yes.
Dr. Yaget?
Yes.
Dr. Seelig?
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right, we're into the Cs. We have C1 through C19.
Sandy's not here, so I'm going to pull C1, C2, and C4.
That's
I agree.
nice.
So C1, C2, and C4 have been pulled for separate voting. Do we have any others that people want to have pulled for separate voting? Can I get a motion in on C3, C5 through C19?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
A second
I
there.
have a move and second. Anybody have any discussion on those? Can I get a roll call vote?
Mr. Binder?
Yes.
Fallon?
Yes.
Falzarano?
Yep.
Mr. Horowitz? Yep. Mrs. Mandel?
Yes.
Pepe?
Aye.
Mr. Sun?
Yes.
Dr. Yaget?
Yes.
Dr. Seelig?
Yes. Can I get a
In
motion
view
on
of the
C1?
late hour, I will move together C1, C2, and C4.
Can I get a second on that?
Second.
I just want
Okay.
to briefly address, I know Janet Werner taught my daughter. My daughter is still reaping the benefits of Janet's very rigorous teaching of writing here at the school. I know some people have complained to Tom over the years of how rigorous Janet is, but she's been a wonderful teacher for many, many years, and it's a real loss for the school.
I would just have to,
I was going to say, with C4, I feel the same sense of loss, because I know Deborah, my daughter, had gone through her class, and she excelled and was able to get scholarships based upon, artwork that she had done while in the school.
I would just like to say on C4, all three of my sons have taken art through Mrs. Gayton's. My first son took 4 years, and one of my twins took 4, the other one took 3. She's not only has been a super art teacher, she's also been a great mentor for my young boys in terms of helping them get into colleges. She helps those kids get organized into college, lines things up, she gives them college resources, identifies possible schools and outlets for them, almost like a guidance counselor in a lot of ways.
Portfolios are
And she puts-
amazing that
She's been a big advocate of portfolios, and we just got, one of my sons applied to Catholic University as an architect, because it's an accredited architecture school, and they sent back a very nice letter, just thanking him for the portfolio that he'd sent forward, and how much it had meant to them to be able to see some of his work. So it's just she's been a really great experience for us here. Laura?
I'd like to add to that, too. My daughter graduated and went through the portfolio process with Ms. Gatens, and it was amazing. It was truly amazing the way, she pulled her talents together, to present the best that they could offer. It's a real loss.
We had a retirement workshop here, a few weeks ago, and I think folks realized that it was not financially advantageous for them to stay, so that's why we're losing them. They're not.
I'm
Well,
grateful
I'd like to
Patty-
just, I'd like to say the same thing. My daughter had that same set of classes, had a very nice portfolio. And my one comment is that she leaves some very big shoes that I hope we can fill with the
It'll
replacement.
be very difficult.
Just a thing to think about. I know when we used to have the board meetings, what was that room? That cafeteria adjunct,
Yeah.
remember that
Oh,
place?
yeah, 107B.
And they had on the wall the names of teachers who
Yeah.
service. Are we?
We're pretty much at the bottom
Well,
of it.
maybe a thought to, think about building a grounds issue, whatever, really in that beautiful atrium we have, there's a lot of wall space.
A nice idea.
It might, for our Hall of Fame, whatever you want to call it, for our teachers that have, given 20, 25, 35 years, that, to pick a prominent place where we can, acknowledge their
Very nice
contributions
We're
to
on
our
it.
children, might be a nice thing to do.
Okay.
I also, I want to say that Janet Werner also, she's Teacher of the Year this year, which,
It's a nice honor.
It's a nice honor to
Ready to
go out
finish
with. And my son currently has Mr. Gebauer, and he's a tough teacher, but,
Knows his
again.
geometry.
Yes, but again,
weather.
after
And
giving all
weather.
those years, it's
He's
quite
our-
an accomplishment.
He's our weather consultant also.
That's right, that's right.
Can I get a roll?
We don't need a roll.
I don't need a, can I just get a voice vote on C1, C2, and C4, which have been moved and seconded? You've had a lot of very nice comments. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. With regret. Can we move on to the Ds? Does anybody have any of the Ds, D1 through D7, to be pulled and voted on separately?
Yes.
Go ahead.
The,
D7.
yes, D7.
All right, D7's off.
Then I will
Can I
move
move D1
D1 through
D6?
D6 with D5 as amended to change the amount.
I'll second that.
Okay, I've got D1 through D6 have moved and seconded. Discussion?
Yeah, I've got
I
a
have some
question.
discussion.
Oh,
I have discussion on D1.
Go for it.
No,
Laura.
you go first. You go first.
First, Fran, I looked at the detailed budget, and I want to thank you for agreeing to accept the same salary next year as this year on page
You
12.
didn't look closely enough. Look a little closer.
That was a little bit of humor. The real question I have is that in the list of capital projects, we have a sound system at $200,000. I was around December 2 years ago when we went out to get that additional funding. We promised a security system. Last year, roughly March or April, we said we couldn't afford to do anything last year. I thought we had some intent of doing something this year. And I would like to recommend that we consider doing something with this lease purchase where we put that in, and maybe change the pattern of the lease purchase payments over the next few years, and at least put $300,000 or $400,000 towards that security system in the next budget, and maybe cut back on the sound system. My personal belief is that the security system was something we promised. There are a number of board members here who made that promise. Fran was here too when we talked about that. I just think that that's something from a kind of a personal integrity point of view that I had to make this statement to the board. For those of you who weren't here, I think we still have an obligation there, and it also has some benefit.
Okay, you're not disputing the 200,000, you're disputing the possibility to raise the question about what the use of it should be for.
Yes, but I'm also raising the question of if we're doing lease purchase, maybe we could throw a little bit more in there for a security system and adjust the pattern of payments so that we can live for the next 3 or 4 years, but do those things now. Don't wait another year to start the security system.
Well, you do realize that we have done pieces of that. It's just not complete.
I think you need something on the exit roads, you need something in the parking lots. I think that there's probably a wireless solution that would give us that security that helped out. Remember the Pequannock situation last year? That video system helped them crack that case. And God forbid we ever need it, but
Okay.
let's have it.
Bernie, let me just address what you're saying, because I don't think anyone really disagrees, theoretically or in principle what you're saying. I think as Fran said, there are components to security system. We upgraded, security is
The
fire,
alarm system.
alarms, life safety, and, motion detectors. I think a lot of what you're
cameras.
talking about is video, and
Yes,
that's
it
correct.
is. I'm talking
But let me
video.
just say one thing about that, is that unfortunately, the prior firm that we had thought, it was Eastech, that would put together a thorough and meticulous plan, a specification, it fell far short. So really, to do this correctly, because, it's something, it's a lot of money, and B, it's important, hopefully what we're including in the budget is the money that will fund in an intelligent, thoughtful, meticulous way that specification so that we can, update the plans, going forward to do it the right way. So it's not, I think we'd all like to, have that included, but the first step is to make sure that which we want to include has been, vetted by a, very competent organization, and unfortunately, right now, that's not the case.
That is still in the budget, Bob.
To get the,
That is
that's what I said. So it's not that we're not going in that direction, Bernie, you're right, we all want to be there, but the first step is to make sure, it's really the most important step, it's like building the building. I mean, you can't build a building until you have plans and specifications. The same as with the video surveillance system. We need to get a plan put together, and I think sooner than later.
But nothing you said,
I think
nothing you say says that we should not put a few $100,000 in the budget for next year to do that.
Can I ask a question?
I'm not sure how we would, we're in a bit of a crunch right now
No,
from
I
a time
understand.
standpoint. I'm not talking about lateness of the hour. I'm just wondering how we now make a change to the budget that would that would add something into it.
I want to ask this question to Tim, because obviously we've gotten, we have that approved, we spent a lot of time on that. If next year, in the current year, if there happened to be a situation that we, for whatever unanticipated reason, we had some extra cash, and if it wasn't budgeted, would we be able to spend money on a project that wasn't in a budget because we didn't have the resource, but now in the middle of the year we did have the resource?
You mean if it wasn't tagged for that purpose?
Correct.
Not that it wasn't budgeted, it's obviously in there, but it had not been tagged for that purpose.
Correct.
So let's say you found extra capital, could we then use that?
Correct.
Yeah, well, there's always opportunities that the board has. We may have to get approvals from the state, the county, what have you, but there's still enough flexibility in the way the budgets are maintained and prepared that we can still, if that opportunity came up, it's something we could,
Okay.
and with a few approvals here and there, we could always move things around.
Okay, so
The opportunity has to come up, though.
No, I see.
Do you have it listed in your long-range facility plan?
The video surveillance system?
Is that one way to make sure that you can move money to it?
There is, I don't know if it's under certainly not the way the board envisioned it, at least not what Bernie's talking about or what we're talking about here. I think there was some original talk about it. I don't know when it started.
It could also be incorporated under the school safety and security plan. That's done yearly. That's updated yearly. And the board could decide that they want to put a piece of the, let's say, video surveillance in that plan. If Tim says there's funds available to do that, and within the scope of the specifications that are developed that we have included in this budget, it's certainly feasible.
Yeah, I mean, this is a topic, this is going to be a discussion with finance. I don't know if it's facilities finance, probably more finance.
Probably both.
Because we are moving in a direction. I'll say that to the board because we are meeting with a contractor who does specs and things like that, who also has state contract.
Right, which is a good thing.
So
which the other
we've had
company did
some
not have.
discussions preliminary that we have, this isn't something that we want to abandon either. Understanding the board's commitment to it.
Go ahead. I just want, before we finish that specific question, is there anything we can do to assure that we're going to try to move towards the video surveillance or security systems for next year? So, I mean, the question that's raised here is, I'm not sure we can earmark or tag funds for this. Is there any way that we can more clearly identify that that's what we're going to try to prioritize?
Well, I think the fact that we have money to go ahead with the specification shows a intention of this district to move in that direction. We wouldn't be spending money to put a specification together if it weren't our purpose to, once we to have that plan specification developed, to move ahead with that
And when do you
plan.
expect that? When will we have that completed? Do you have any feel?
No, I don't have an answer, other than I know within the next month or so, we're going to have a discussion, at least we're trying to, with the finance group through the contractor that we've been talking to. And we've already talked to him about if he can give us some guidance on what would work best with this school.
I'm not sure if that answers your question or addresses it as clearly
No,
as
let
you'd like.
me try to say it again very clearly. What I'm proposing is instead of $796,000 of a lease purchase, I'm proposing $1 million, but adjust the repayment schedule so that the total spending next year stays at the $183,000. And I'm also suggesting maybe you cut back on the sound system or some of the laptops to give yourself, let's say, a $300,000 kitty to really get started next year on this. So it's a multi-part proposal. The first question is, can we adjust the payment stream so that if we brought the borrowing up to $1 million, could we still get by on roughly $180,000 as a first-year payment?
You have the flexibility to do.
So
You
you
can
have
change
the
it.
flexibility. So
Yeah.
I'd say let's do it.
Yeah, you can change, on a lease purchase, you can change it. The downside would be in the following years, it's going to be a little bit
Sure,
more.
just a little bit bigger.
And by the way, just, with that, my preference, spent a lot of time in this budget period. I don't want to tinker with it, but we do, as we did discuss in the Finance Committee, we did have that, situation where we mentioned the possibility of authorizing with the textbook situation.
Yes.
That could,
Last resort.
what?
Last resort.
No, but that could in fact be utilized for the purpose that Bernie is suggesting. I don't like to throw money in a budget when A, we don't know how much in fact the project would cost because we haven't developed a plan and specification. That to me is the biggest concern. But plus, Bernie, to your point, what Tim has said, once we have that plan and specification, there are options that we can have in the coming year, even though we didn't create a specific line item for that video surveillance system, that we could in fact proceed in that direction. The fact that it's not included now doesn't mean if we do have the funds or are able to identify those funds that we couldn't in fact proceed with it then.
I don't know if you'll be able to change the total borrowing from 796 to $1 million if you get the plan in your hand. That's my question.
I don't know how we address it at this point in time, because for the following reason. When does this have to go to the state?
Tomorrow.
Well, I get to March 6th, but theoretically, as soon as the
March
board
6th,
approves it,
so we
it's going
need
to
to
the
approve it.
county.
And to the point that Rob was making, we start to make modifications to it at this point. I think if we go after the point that Rob was making about specifications, that we'll get, at least then we'll have it clearly identified the cost, and I think at that time we can then start to work towards budgeting and finding out where we can maybe dig some money out of this year's budget to help make that happen. But I'm a little reluctant to say let's start making modifications into the guts of it. But I would like to
I'm not
see it as a
proposing
part
to
of it.
change the $183,000 in the budget. I'm just proposing that we give ourselves another line in there.
I know, it's a change late, and my background says changes that are made this late in the game tend to cause problems next week, because we didn't think about something else in the budget.
There's an unintended
That's
consequence that we don't know. I don't know
I'm
if this
just-
would increase the get us outside of the cap. I don't know. I don't know.
There's a lot
But
there.
my proposal is to change the 200 for the sound system to 400, and to leave the first-year payment the same.
I don't know how you do that, Bernie.
You change 200 to 400, and you say we're using a different repayment schedule.
I really am very reluctant to do that at this late time. I mean, we're going to have to vote on it. We've got to vote on it tonight, unless everybody wants to come back tomorrow night. Well, you have to send it tomorrow? Or you have to the 6th, unless everyone wants to come back tomorrow to have a discussion on it. I just would soon let it stay and try to prioritize it, make sure that we focus on it in the coming year.
In case there are any questions.
And maybe we won't have the money, maybe we won't have all the money that we need for next year that we can identify. But at least we'll have the specifications together and we'll be able to put it in next year's budget. We ought to be able to put something in. So, we gotta move on. Laura?
One item that I've been trying to look for in the budget is the guidance program, Coin 3. Did we budget for that?
Gone.
Is that an expensive thing? Is that something that we can keep in the budget? Because that is a very useful tool that I know the guidance counselors use. I know it's different than Naviance, the other program that we're adding this year.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you
No.
said point three.
Coin 3.
Oh, coin three.
Coin 3 is
No,
in
it's-
there.
it's
It is
not-
in there? It
yeah.
is in there? Okay.
Yeah, it's under,
I thought you said point three, sorry.
I mean, you're not going to see the specific item.
No, I just want to make sure that it's there.
Yeah, you know,
Because it's a
funny,
very
I
useful
talked to,
tool.
you know, Dave Peterson came over today and asked me that specific question.
Oh, good.
It was
Good.
coin, there was 3 of them and he asked about, that was one of them.
Okay, no, it's a
So
very
he did,
important.
yeah, no, that's in there.
Okay, good.
It's not, you won't see it in this.
Okay,
It's in
that's
the
more-
detail of the
the
line.
category.
Okay, and then I also had in my notes to bring up the issue about the sound system and the $200,000 also, because I believe that, you know, there is some room to get some input and come up with a system that might not be quite so pricey and still meet our objectives. And to me, the sound system is very important and critical. And I'm very glad that it's in the budget, and I don't want to, you know, see that not happen. I think every time we have an event in the theater, it's embarrassing, you know, to have put in this facility and, you know, and not have a theater that is fully functioning because, you know, we don't have a sound system. So I'm very grateful that we do have budgeted money designated for the sound system. I just think that perhaps,
We'll
you
try
know,
to get the best price possible.
I'm sure, and I sent you an email, you know, with some resource information that
Okay.
hopefully will, you know, lead you to,
Yeah, it's
to
our
save the
intent. I
district a
mean,
little bit of money.
The numbers are budgeted numbers.
Right, sure,
And if
sure.
you happen to save, then good for the district.
Exactly, yeah.
Pete?
Bernie, I just wanted to respond. You know, I think we've already cut a substantial number of computers out of the proposed budget for last year. And also, with regard to your point about borrowing a greater sum on a sale leaseback, I don't think it's a good idea. You know, every time we do a sale leaseback, we're saddling future boards with paying for what we're doing now. We have put money into security, into the fire alarm system and everything. It's not the video system, but we are going to have those other sale leasebacks coming off. It's going to give us a method where we don't change our budget that much. We're going to have more money available in the coming years, and I agree we need to get to a video security, but I don't think we should be changing this budget now.
But then
Any
also,
other discussion?
I was just saying, but not to preclude. I mean, once we get the specification, see what it is, if it's phased in over a couple of years, it's not, the fact that it's not in the budget now, Bernie, doesn't mean that we collectively can make a decision to commence installation of it next year if we have the funds. That's the answer.
Lou?
If we've learned anything,
On D3,
Yeah, I tried. Just want you to know, D3, go ahead.
Tim, the first item on the bill list is absolute fencing gear. And I'm just, I didn't get a chance to.
Which one are you asking?
D2, you mean?
D3, we're approving a bill list.
Oh, that's it.
I'm in the wrong one?
D2.
D3 is
D2.
cafeteria, Peter.
D3 is cafeteria, you want D2, I'm sorry. It does, it's almost,
Four, maybe.
you can still ask.
killing us, Pete.
I'm on the
you're killing us.
revised one. D3 is approve the list of bills. On the revised agenda. Oh, for the cafeteria.
Go ahead, ask your question.
Sorry, D2, absolute fencing gear. Does that have anything to do with the fence from?
No.
No, that's fencing. like
Fencing.
joust.
Flex Media.
Thank you.
Oh, you thought that was
More-
sabers
I thought-
and,
No, I
You thought it was
thought
chain-
that-
you thought it was chain link fence.
You thought that
I
was,
thought we were paying Flex Media
It
to
is.
put in the
Flex
the
Media.
fence.
It's not, it's Sabres.
This is Sabres.
Thank
Exactly,
you.
it's for dualies.
I'm done.
Can I get a roll call vote on D1 through D6?
Mr. Binder?
Yes.
Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Mr. Falzarano? Mr. Horowitz?
Yes.
Mrs. Mandel?
Yes.
Mr. Pepe?
Yep.
Mr. Sun?
Yes.
Dr. Yaget?
Yes.
Dr. Seelig?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Can I get a motion on D7?
yeah,
Just move it.
Wait.
Well-
Move it.
You want to move it?
You want to
Doesn't
move
want
it?
to move it.
no.
Okay, that's your,
Is that what I'm?
yeah.
Does
You don't have
anybody want to
it.
move
Does anybody
A6?
want to move D7? Hearing nobody moving it, let's move on.
There you go.
Move.
Now you're up to your other business,
We're on to,
monkey business.
we're on to other business. Is there any other business at this point in time? We do have an executive session tonight. It's 3 topics. So if we can keep other business short, to our advantage during.
I just, we did this opt-out, and I know I asked this in co-curriculum, but I want to, we talk about opt-out on the 25th, because before it all goes before again, I want to have that discussion. So please, let's put it on the agenda. Thank you.
Any other business at this point in time? Hearing none, second opportunity for the public to speak. Seeing none, let's move on. Can I get a motion to move into executive session?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
For the purpose of executive session, for the purpose of discussing matters of negotiation, personnel, and other matters that are governed by attorney-client privilege. I have a motion. Can I get a second? Rob?
Second.
I got a second. All those in favor? Aye. All right.